I'm going to ask Mr. Mayor to lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, welcome everybody to the fiscal year 2019 Capital Planning Summit meeting of the Board of Finance. We've invited our colleagues from the Board of Selectmen, our colleagues from the RTM, representatives, members of the Board of Education who wish to join us, feel free. Tonight we discuss what the capital plans for the town and the Board of Education look like over the next 5 years. One of the pressing items before us, so we put it on this agenda this evening, is the Mill Hill School Building Committee wanted to come before us tonight for a brief discussion, so we'll do that first and then jump right into our capital planning project. Before that, a little bit of news that broke publicly today for the first time, and that is the retirement of our police chief, Gary McNamara. Specific date has not been set, but my understanding is he's leaving around mid-October to take a very big job with Sacred Heart University after being with our police department for 30 plus years and being our chief 8 years. I bring it up because this board has worked very closely with Chief McNamara over the last 8 years. We have a great working relationship with him. And, you know, as I've said publicly before, one of the nicest parts of being involved in public service and serving on a board like this is the ability we have to work with the town's department heads. And in Fairfield, we're very lucky to have very good department heads across the board. Having been on the board for a long time, many of us have worked with these department heads as well as their predecessors, and we're always impressed by their dedication, their competence, and their passion in serving the people of Fairfield and in serving their departments. And Chief McNamara, or Gary, is at the top of the list for us. He's been an exemplary police chief, an exemplary department head, and it says a lot that just recently I went to a firefighters benefit that their foundation put together to raise money for kids to get coats, and it was a comedy night, and the firemen think enough of Chief McNamara that they asked him to MC that event, and that says a lot for how this community feels about him. So we thank him for his service. We wish him well in his new role, and we still hope to see him around town. And it's probably appropriate for me to say thank you to all of our department heads, many of whom are here this evening, for all their work and dedication on our behalf, not just as board members, but as citizens of the town. So thank you all as well. And we look forward to some type of party for Chief McNamara at the appropriate time. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say? Seeing none, I think we'll dive right into it, and we'll bring in Mr. Fairfield himself. Mr. Quinn, come on up. And this is like the 12th building committee he's done, and he's coming up to represent Mill Hill, and I think Mr. Lee's coming up with him. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for being here this evening. So the first item on the agenda is to hear an update from the Mill Hill School Building Committee, which was formed over the last few months and is beginning their work. Oh, we've got a cast of thousands coming up. Welcome, everybody.
Yes, we do.
Go right ahead. Mr. Quinn, I'll kick it over to you.
Okay. I'd like to introduce my co-chairs. Okay.
Hi, I'm Melanie Ruggieri.
Welcome.
Jason Lee.
Welcome.
Terry Ackley.
This is our owner's rep, Charles.
Chuck Warrington, Director of Project Management at Colliers International.
Welcome. Thank you.
And I'm Tom Quinn. I think you've met me before. I did put together a sort of a talking piece that I sent out to you folks, and hopefully we can discuss it tonight, where we had our marching orders right now are to, excuse me, are to go to SD design, okay, for 3 different options. And I would like very much for this board this body to reconsider that, considering that, you know, the three options that we have in front of us. Okay, if we go to SD, will cost us $200,000 to $300,000 in incremental design cost, and I really resent paying that, especially when I kind of know the answer at the end. Okay, so I'd like to have this board reconsider the marching orders. Up to this point, we've marched against the three options that you gave us, and that's what the architects have in their kind of their quiver right now, the three options. But before they come back to fees, which is another week from now, I'd like to have our fees predicated on either one, possibly two, but no more than that options. So you all had an opportunity, I think, to read the piece, and I can start wherever you want me to, Chairman.
Have you discussed this with the Board of Selectmen, first of all?
No, they're on for next week.
Okay, so you'll be discussing this
26th,
same
I think.
issue with the Board of Selectmen next week?
And also the Board of Education,
Okay, all three of them?
all three.
Okay, go ahead with the presentation. Why don't you continue, Mr. Quinn, and tell us what your issues are?
All right, really, the issues are, if we try to go out and get three different estimates
Yep,
at SD level, okay, I'm gonna spend a lot of money. And what bothers me the most is everybody's gonna be watching the variances between estimates, rather than finding out the best school we can build for the amount of dollars we have. And that's normally what a building committee does. It gets its marching orders, called the ed specs, and those ed specs say, you build this school, okay? And when we go out, hire an architect to design that school, and we are the ones that make sure he's designing it within the context of the ed specs and on an efficient level. And that's where we'd like to be. The building committee, in our judgment, shouldn't be in here trying to get to, at the ed spec, basically, how big the school should be.
mm-hmm. Board members, do you have questions, comments? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read your document, and I understand how you're coming to a 441 with the data you're given. My question really is, I don't know how you're making this decision without knowing the redistricting solution. I don't know how we're saying 504 is not the right answer without the redistricting solution. So I feel like this building committee hasn't been given all the information to make an informed decision. Based on the information here, I could probably go with a 441. I'm just unclear.
That's where the 441 came from. It's just what we had.
Yeah, no, and I understand, and I think this makes a lot of sense based on the data you have, but without the redistricting plan, I don't know how we move forward even with that solution.
Mr. Matola?
So we gave you $1.5 million to do this, right? So
Yeah, seed money, yes.
seed money. So what, trying to understand, what's the cost to get three separate designs? Do you have a firm cost to do
No, we
something
don't,
like that?
not yet.
Will
No,
it be
we-
more than $1.5 million?
Three, pardon me? Yeah. For three of them, yes.
Okay.
However, you do realize that's $200,000 to $300,000 that we didn't have to spend, whether or not it's in the $1.5 million. I mean, we have $1.5 million, but it doesn't mean we spend it on it.
I understand. I mean, we voted, we wanted these three options, so the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and even the Board of Ed can make an informed decision on how to move forward. We don't even know if 504 is even viable at that site right now. We just don't.
No.
And we're never going to know that unless we get some type of a design spec for something like that. And maybe it costs $30 million to build a 504 school there. I don't know. I understand where you're coming from, but it's not what we voted on, unless we want to change direction right now. I'm not sure we want to do that.
Yeah, Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
Yeah, if I may follow up, I agree with Mr. Matola. We based that money on the fact that we were getting more than one option. So to find out that 1.5 million won't get us 2 or 3 options is not what we had appropriated that money for. I don't know about the Board of Selectmen. Or you probably might have been in your absence, right?
Anyone else? Mrs. Marmy?
I would agree with Mr. Matola, Mr. DeWitt. I'm concerned that we won't have the complete picture, the complete information that we need to make an informed decision. So I appreciate the work that you've done, because I think it calls into question what the Board of Ed was potentially first recommending in terms of 504, and that we should be open to other ideas, and I think that's what the seed money was there for. But I am concerned that without having some of those drawings and just a complete picture, we're still not going to make that informed decision. So we're really cutting ourselves short here. So my question is, just to drill down a little bit more, how much more money do you estimate that you would need to explore 3 versus 2 options? Or just try to give us a better sense of, you know, we've already approved 1.5. What was that based on? It was just the 2 options versus the 3?
1.5 was seed money that was based on what we did for Holland Hill. Okay? It had nothing to do with options. It was strictly...
That's not true. When we approved, it might be the way the 1.5 was calculated or whatever, but when we approved going for 3 options, to my colleague's point, we were told that the 1.5 would cover getting 3 options. And we specifically went round and round and asked the question several times, is this going to cost more money? And we were told that it was well within reason and we would be able to get the 3 options. Because to my colleague's point, this board had the same issue that you have. What are we trying to build there? And to go a little bit further, we were looking at the study that was done on enrollment projections. And quite frankly, the vast majority of our board, I don't want to speak for everybody, so I'll say the vast majority, came to the conclusion that we couldn't support a larger school based on those enrollment projections at the time, right? As well as we didn't have any redistricting plan. To Mr. DeWitt's point, we all agreed that the school needs to be renovated, and I think I can speak in unanimous fashion for our board that we believe that that school needs to be renovated, and we want to make that happen. But the size was always the conundrum because we didn't have the facts. It's new information saying that 1.5 will not give us the 3 options that we had discussed back, I guess, in the springtime. Isn't that about when it was? So that's new information.
Okay. But I tell you, where I came with the 1.5 was it was a Holland Hill left. Okay?
That could be true. This was even before you were appointed, so
I know.
this was not a representation that you had made. This was a representation that was made by others, that we could do this. And we still don't know even if that site could support a 504 school, given traffic studies, given ledge,
Which is...
giving
yes, you're
everything else.
absolutely right. And what I'm proposing is that we look at the 441, give that to architects, and let them go and cost that out.
Well, I
You
don't
could
know
do
that it
variances.
shouldn't be less. I
Pardon?
don't know that it shouldn't be the smaller option. The case wasn't made that we need to increase capacity at that site at all, in many of
You
our
currently
views.
have 347 students,
Right.
okay? To build a school, remodel a school to 378 gives you no swing space, okay?
I don't know that because I don't know, again, we're looking at the enrollment projections for the entire district. And it didn't, there was no there in those projections. So we had said, and I think, Ed, I don't want to speak for the Board of Selectmen, and I don't know if you were on there at the specific time, but the whole discussion at that body was about where's the plan, correct? I don't want to speak for your board, but it was where's the plan as it relates to redistricting and where the students are going to be. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
I cannot comment to redistricting.
Right,
It's
right.
not ours.
Mrs. Esmond?
Thank you. Mr. Quinn, I don't know if you can answer this, but your conclusion on the 504, that it would exceed the top enrollment by 31%, and therefore the state could reject it for reimbursement, is that based on any new information since we discussed the seed money?
With Colliers, we work with a lot of other districts as well with the off-school construction grants. The program here is certainly unique as well because of the redistricting issue. It's a long-term plan, so you are unique, and I want to put that preface on this. With newer and recent grant applications from the state, that office has been rejecting applications if they're not within the 93 to 94% ratio of what they call the space standard to what you want to build. If it's 92, 91% or less, they don't even accept the application and put you on the priority list for approval for a grant application. Now with this district, you certainly have an exception, a special case here with so many schools and the challenge of redistricting plan, which I can't speak to, but it's kind of a special case within Fairfield. So they may look at that and the history of it, and knowing the history with so many Riverfield, Holland Hill, and the other schools that you've had grant applications, they may take exception to that, but their very recent actions, the director of that unit has been pushing back because one is special legislation, which you haven't gone for on these schools, or alterations and additions, so that may come into play, but he's been pushing back if it's not properly sized.
So you feel strongly enough about both the projections we have and rejections at the state level that you do not recommend the 504?
I can't say I can't recommend 504. Now I can't say it strongly. I don't recommend it. I'm just saying what we've seen with other grant applications where if the building is calculated to be say 90,000 square feet and the district wants to build 105 or 110,000 square feet, they're saying we're not going to accept your application. Now will that happen here? It's hard to say. I think it's a toss-up based upon the history.
It's a risk. It's pointing out a risk, really.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh?
Thanks for your presentation, Mr. Quinn. I'm kind of not exactly sure why we're here, because I thought we had approved that we wanted the three options and whatever, and I did not know that it's in your board's power to come back to us and tell us which of these options we should be going with. I thought we'd done the three options to get information.
Correct.
And the elected bodies had done that as opposed to an appointed body, you guys. So I was kind of confused on why we're exactly here. But now that we are, I guess, has anybody on this body, any of the five of you, had any private conversations with the first selectman outside of your meetings in regards to this project? No? No.
Why? See you next week.
Okay. Because I wanted to ask him what his thoughts were, so I guess he hasn't told you.
He has a copy of this.
Okay. But you haven't spoken to him what numbers he'd prefer to see? Okay. On the 441 option on page 2 of your memorandum or presentation here, you bring up the issue that we just talked about that the 504 option is 31.25% higher in space than the top enrollment. And you make note that in order to be kind of within bounds of what we're supposed to, that, you know, the option can be modified to 422, correct?
That's correct. That's the 10%.
Okay. Which would really, I guess, be a 420 school, because you do one less 21 student classroom, correct?
Basically, yes.
Okay. So I guess that's something I guess we'll have to decide on as we go about this, because if 441 doesn't seem to make sense if there's a possibility of it getting rejected.
Well, it's written down so that you have an option. If they do start turning back programs and grants, that this particular 441 lends itself to getting down to their 10%,
So that would be
the 422.
422 total, but in actuality, based on how many students we put in a classroom and how many you plan for, that would be 420.
That's right.
Okay. Is there a limitation on the amount of space that we use for non-classroom space? For all the special education rooms, nursing rooms?
Limitation, I don't,
Is there a limitation on, based on the population, on how many of those rooms you can
No.
have? So you could build a school that had 21 classrooms, and you could have 50 of those special rooms. And they're fine with paying for that? Yeah.
no.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you'd have to support those spaces to the state. You'd have to justify why you want those spaces. It's not a given that they're gonna give you all those spaces. They are, when they develop their space standards, which is what they use, for the criteria, years ago, they didn't account for many of these spaces. So in many of the grant applications we're seeing, special education, autism programs, IPOP, whatever you have in each district, they're giving leniency to those justifications to a certain degree.
Okay.
But it's not a one-to-one, you can build whatever you want, they're just not gonna let you do that.
Okay. So, but there's no formula such as,
No, it's strictly a judgment and a discussion with that office.
and a justification and what your argument for is for the number of spaces? Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Marmon?
Just to follow up to my earlier question, so what is the anticipated or estimated extra cost for the third option, or for all of the options that goes beyond the 1.5 million?
Yeah, so we took, based upon Riverfield and Holland Hill, those design costs that we have historically, assuming those would be close, and we've escalated those slightly. We took the values at each design level. You'll go to a schematic design, and then you go to a design development, and that's what we're talking about here with the town's new methodology, is developing a project through design development. So we took those values for schematic design, design development, and took them for the 3 different enrollments, and estimated what those costs would be through DD. We came up, based upon the systems that we use, we came up with about $1.8 million. Now that's a range that could come in. We don't have the proposals from the architects. That could come in lower. But it's based upon historic values that we've seen. There might be some efficiencies between the 3 different options that we might be able to find, traffic studies, however, site surveys. But that's our rough estimate right now, is about 1.8 million.
Mr. Bateson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that, when you say the 1.8 million, is that 1.8 million for the SD only, or does that, I remember the 1.5 we approved, there was several other soft costs in there. Is that 1.8 on top of those soft costs, or does that include?
That's all the soft costs. That's the total amount of soft costs, architect's fees, hazmat investigations for asbestos, PCBs, through design development. That's all the costs for the entire project, for all the services that would be required for the project.
Okay, so to do the 3 scenario exercise, it's going to cost me an additional $300,000 over what we approved.
That's what we estimate.
Okay, thank you.
So, any other questions, comments? Mr. Brown?
Have you, okay, I'm under the impression that there's going to be redistricting, regardless, correct? At some point, the school, the district needs to redistrict. Have you talked to the Board of Ed about that at all?
It's not my role.
Well, I don't know how we're making decisions without talking to the Board of Ed about redistricting.
We all, I think, assume there's going to be redistricting.
So, you don't have any better information than we had last spring on enrollment projections or any future redistricting?
I'm using the same enrollment projections.
Yeah. So there's no fact pattern here that's changed, except for the cost, when we made this decision in the spring.
Right.
Well, if I may.
And then I'll go to Mr. Bates. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I hope I
Yeah, I'm
didn't.
sorry, did I cut you off? No, if I may, from my notes only, not official notes, from April, because it was the night we voted, we had this discussion, I remember. Yeah, right. We recommended we do a deduct alternate study starting with 504, going to 441 and 378, so 3. But there was also a note I made in here that we spent less than $1 million to do 2 full trade studies for Holland Hill. So, given the data that you're talking about, 600,000 each, that data was inaccurate.
Yeah, I don't know where you got those numbers from.
I believe me, somebody said it because
We're- I'm
and you
also-
weren't here. I mean,
I
the
wasn't
building
here.
committee wasn't even formed in April, right?
No.
So, I don't know who was speaking on the building
And I was
committee's
the
behalf.
chair of Holland Hill. and I
I'll have to
wasn't
look
here.
up who was here. I don't have those notes.
I think, Mr. Cullen, there was a bunch of representatives of the Education Administration. Was here. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to restate what I think is happening. It just sounds like nothing's changed.
Right.
It just sounds like the building committee is coming back and saying, it's a little bit more than we're thinking. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm taking away from it.
And would it be appropriate first for them to first get a yea or nay from the Board of Selectmen before they come to
Absolutely.
us? So
Absolutely.
I think that has to happen.
Absolutely. No. Mr. Brown? You kind of got cut off.
Well, I think, and I don't know how the Board of Selectmen feels, but I know for myself, I like to see what the plan is for redistricting before we come up with a answer for what we need. Otherwise, and I believe this is the last major renovation the town has to do for schools. Am I right about that?
The white man.
We have Holland Hill and we have this one.
Yeah.
Major. Okay, so I guess the point is we need to get it right. I don't know how you get it right without the information you need from the Board of Ed. That's it.
Anyone else?
For what?
I guess the question is if we were to wait for that information, how would that affect, our timeline that we're under?
We don't know. We made it very clear back in the spring, based on the fact pattern that we had, what we thought we needed to continue. You're essentially coming back a number of months later, after doing the legwork and doing the work, and saying, yeah, we have no better information other than the fact that your options are going to cost more money. So, it's got to go back to the Board of Selectmen, then it's got to come back before us if anything changes, and then I think it's got to go back to the RTM. And nothing's changed, other than the price point for all the options. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, to the building committee, I hear your pain.
Yeah.
And I know that it's difficult for you to figure out what to do next, but I mean, think of it from our point of view. We're sitting here, we're about to expend umpteen millions of dollars into a facility, and what happens if 2 years down the road, a redistricting plan is produced that renders that, we didn't need it. So,
Okay, I hear you.
that's,
Yeah.
I hear you. We're struggling with that same concept on the dollars end and capacity end on our side.
I really, if I might,
Yeah.
suggest that you need to sit with all the boards together and come up with where we're going. Board of Ed.
Yeah, you're caught in the middle, and as Mr. Bateson said, we feel your pain and we appreciate all the effort and time that goes into it. And I think, the good news, if the school community can take something away from it, is I don't think anybody's saying that school doesn't need to be renovated. I just think,
We are marching to doing the renovation.
right,
And we're marching to doing estimates, SDs, for 3 options.
right.
But before we committed, I thought you folks should know. It's gonna cost incrementally $300,000.
Yep.
And it doesn't, it's okay.
Which is new information, so we thank you. And there have been occasions in the past where new information wasn't brought forward, and then the bill was presented after the fact. So we thank you for bringing forward the information. Does anybody else have anything? Everyone, oh, yes, Mr. Peterson, please come on up. Would you like to? We'll make one.
Well, he got out of that way too quick.
I just, it feels like it's the appropriate venue to give a little context about the board's position on this matter. Obviously, this is a conversation I don't think we can resolve tonight. You know, one of the things from Mr. Quinn's memo that we did agree with, I think I can speak for the entire board, is the removal perhaps of the 378 option, noting that as the far out 2028 enrollment projections we have, that school would be a 92% capacity at that point if we built to 378, which was not actually an option based on those numbers that the board wanted to consider. In terms of the redistricting, I understand this is something of a chicken and the egg problem. From our standpoint, one of the ways we look at this is that the number of districts that border the Mill Hill territory, we have Dwight, we have Sherman, we have Riverfield, are all among our most crowded schools. And the idea that we can look out 10 years and figure out exactly at this point how those are going to be shuffled around is a difficult thing for us to make a clear prediction on. It's a little bit frustrating, but again, the way we see it is Mill Hill is an opportunity for us to create additional space in the system that may be used for a future redistricting that will solve issues elsewhere. We also, some of the things they're also considering are, the possibility at some point the legislature might ask for universal pre-K, or that our ECC program, which is already large and looking for extra space, may need even more space. We're trying to. A lot of our viewpoint on this is kind of involves that holistic approach.
Go ahead, Mr. Mottola.
So, and I sat on the Board of Ed and for 6 years, and I got to say, with all due respect, and I wanted to say this in April, if you had simply said we want a 504 school because we intend to redistrict, we can't give you the specifics right now, but it makes sense, and we're gonna have a redistricting plan. I would have been the first one to vote on the 504 school, but you guys have been kind of going around the edges on this, and that's the frustrating thing to me. I don't need a specific street-by-street plan right now, but I need a commitment from the Board of Education that we're gonna redistrict, and that's why we need a 504 school, period. That's what I wanted to hear in April. I didn't hear that.
I do understand that, and the way that I would respond to that, and this is going to sound a little bit fluffy, is that at our last meeting, one of the things that we did, we're scheduled to do after much surveying and talking to members of the board, was to talk about our board goals for this school year. We did not get around to that. We had a very full meeting. We postponed that to another meeting. But I will say that based on internal surveys of what board members see as a possible priority for this coming year, many have asked for a discussion of redistricting. We have not made a specific recommendation or timetable, but it is absolutely something that is deeply embedded in all of our discussions.
Well, I don't know why it hasn't happened yet, or why it's more of a priority, the redistricting, because you guys need to get on it. I mean, all I really see is that you're adding more open space children to the process and bringing students in from out of town, more than the previous year. More seats to fill up, more seats for us to buy, with taxpayers' dollars, with bonding. I don't see it going the other way. That's where I thought it was going. Turns out, and I misread Dr. Jones's comments when she made them to us. I should have dug deeper. I'll make a point of trying to do that next year. But I thought we were either stabilized or going down. We're going up. And one of those reasons we're going up is because you're trying to deal with a racial imbalancing issue and once again trying not to redistrict to deal with that. So nobody wants to redistrict. What you want is the taxpayers of this town to bond their way through your problem by building all this excess capacity all over. When numbers are showing they're coming down, not going up. And based on the state of the state, people are leaving, they're not coming. So that's what I don't understand. And that's why you hear that you don't think there's justification in this memo that the board gave here for the 378. I think there's more justification for the 378 than the 504. When I read this, I was happy to hear that the 504 seemed to be on its way out the door.
Well, so
So, so that's what I'm concerned about. Our finances in this town, while they're strong, we're going to be taxing people out of this town. Because we have a hidden problem coming with some of the changes in the tax laws and things like that that are going to cost this town more money. We have a state that, if it continues along its current path, seems to want to tax Fairfield as rich and wants to do a little Robin Hood and steal from the rich and give to the poor. Things are changing and people aren't going to be willing to pay for it. And I see a school that over the next 10 years is going to get a couple of students above 378. I want a plan for 378, and you guys want 504. I have a problem with that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
Granted, Mr. Peterson, this is before your time, but we sat here with Riverfield, and Board of Ed said 504, and we said, okay. And then Holland Hill came along, 504, okay. Not going this time. I couldn't be more in line with Mr. Mottola here. No one's ever come to us, like those other two schools, we need this, based on some data. This is like, yeah, kind of trust us. Even your paid advisors came here. My first question, are you going to have to redistrict? Oh yeah, no. There's nothing else you can do until you guys redistrict. Their first words out of their mouth after my first question. And here we are almost a year later, and you're saying it's chicken and egg, it's too hard. I'm sorry, you guys got to do something hard then. Because I don't know how, I know I can't move forward with this. I can't even justify giving you $300,000 more for a third option right now. And I don't know where the Board of Selectmen is going to come in, Matt, but I think you're going to have to come in with at least a new proposal for an additional $300,000 for them to go past. But right now, I wouldn't even vote for that.
Jim, did you have something? Yeah, I think we just came to be repeating ourselves.
Yeah. Where does that leave us?
Go back and talk to the Board of Selectmen, and let's see what they want to do with it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much, and I do appreciate your service. We all appreciate your service on the board. We know it's not easy, and in this particular one, you're stuck in the middle.
Yes.
So, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to go on to item number 2 this evening. And this item is to review and discuss the town and the Board of Education's non-recurring capital and capital projects planning documents, their timing and related subsequent bonding requirements, and the estimated impact on debt service levels over the next several years. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mayor and ask him to kick us off with how he would like to proceed on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's 10 exhibits here. Some of them are just lots of numbers. And department heads are here to respond to questions that the board may have. Exhibit number 1 is just the total of the Board of Eds by year, the town by year, and the total by year. It's, what's more important is what it's going to do to our debt service, so skip over that one. Exhibit number 2 is the comparison. I think this is a relevant and important schedule. It's the capital plan as presented in September of 2017 versus the capital plan as presented in September of 2018. And if you looked at this, you probably caught the fact that if you go down to the bottom right, we have $12,741,000 more in total requested projects, but if you go up to the total above, we only have $3,742,000 in additional debt service payments. And so it can appear that we're going to get 12 million bucks worth of business for only $3 million. The big difference there.
Like the magic.
The magic, right?
Nice job, like the magic.
When the capital plan was initially developed, we were on a track, if you look at historical activity, of having about $3 million per year of non-recurring, and that $3 million per year got baked into the forecasts going out 20 years. The last 4 or 5 years, the non-recurring and what people are talking about is more like $1.4 million, $1.5 million. So there's 10 years of a reduction of $15 million, of $1.5 million per year. So that's the reason for that apparent anomaly. But overall, it's I think a refinement, not a refinement, it's an adjustment that seems appropriate based upon what's happened and what people are recommending to take place. The next schedule is, Exhibit 3, is 4 categories: what's been removed, what's been reduced, what's
Let's
been
take some time on
increased.
this one.
Yes, I thought you might.
No, Exhibit 3.
Exhibit 3, and then the new. Now,
Hang on, let Mr. DeWitt ask a question on number 2. Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have last year's presentation. And last year, 9/15/2017, the capital plan total was $439,786 and a couple bucks, right? Why is that a different number than the number I'm seeing here that says capital plan September 2017?
I assume it's a different number because you have a schedule that,
What's the number?
or that,
What's the difference?
From the presentation last year,
Yeah,
the
no.
difference
What,
is
yeah, how much is
it's-
the difference?
sounds like $10 million.
13 million-ish, 13 million and a half less portrayed in this capital plan this year. Last year's number for September 2017 was 439,786,357. Now it's 426,070. So I don't know how that happened.
There was, in the original plans that were presented to us last year,
Uh-huh.
there were a couple of errors. One of them, as I recall, the golf clubhouse.
golf course, not the golf course, but the clubhouse.
So I wonder if,
There were some adjustments
But
made, but
those errors would make this number get larger this year. This number got smaller.
Right.
So I would think if the number were higher, I'd almost
Agree.
be okay with you.
Right.
But it went down $13 million. So that's,
right,
how does your bottom number compare?
bottom right?
Bottom
Bottom
left.
right.
Bottom left.
Capital plan September 2017 last year, 91,976,768, and now you have, so it's about
Okay.
$3 million.
And then that 3 million is the
is the
the
golf.
clubhouse.
Yeah.
So that number ties.
Okay. So it went up.
and
So that one went up.
I'm assuming the other one, might have been an earlier, this apparently was,
Can you,
so you have an earlier rendition. And I can't
I have
speak
the
to all the
one from
changes.
the meeting,
Yeah.
9/15/17.
So
there
these-
was
this one obviously
revisions issued
changes.
right the next week. There was,
Yeah.
if you recall,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
a,
Yeah, we can tie the bottom
Not the
number, so I'm
finest
assuming whatever the other changes were is the difference, is the reason for the top number
Can you-
difference as well.
Can you take a look at Mr. DeWitt's schedule after the meeting and see if we
Yeah.
can't reconcile? Anything else on that, Mr. DeWitt? And thanks
No,
for
that's
bringing
it.
that forward. All right, I'm going to jump in here for a second, just to put this all in context. Can we all turn real quick to exhibit number 6? And then we can go back to exhibit number 3, okay, which are the add, subtracts, and delete on the town side.
On one of the,
If you look at exhibit number 6,
let me
just
share
to
this
hit the highlights, look at our column number 3, our debt service level, and then look as the percentage of the budget. So, assuming this all ties, Mr. Mayor, what you're telling us is, based on best available information right now, our debt service as a percentage of the budget is going to stay below that magic 10%.
Correct.
Now, in the out years, it goes down to closer to 6%, but I'm going to put a caveat on that and say those numbers out that far are quite squishy, right? But what
Very
that-
soft.
Right, but what that shows is that we've got that headroom between what's currently projected and that quote-unquote 10% magic number that we always try to say below. Fair statement?
Yes, the Board of Ed is pretty good at putting their, projecting what they think they might need 10 years out. The town is not quite as foresightful.
Well,
in
and this isn't necessarily a criticism, but neither of you are all that great in projecting out what the increases in the actual costs are going to be year over year, unless you change the methodology. But I think as we are going to talk about the golf clubhouse and other things, we've learned that our projections of cost increases and escalators aren't the best. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. The accountant that worked on this specifically was instructed this year to, when working with the department heads, to emphasize that they want them to be thinking forward about what the costs might be.
Okay, good. Is there anything on Exhibit 6, other than the highlights that I pointed out, that you would like to speak to real quick?
No, I think you pointed out, if you go to 6A, that's kind of, which is right behind 6, is a new schedule, I think, this year, which shows you what the current outstanding debt is. On the top left, $200 million. That ties into our CAFR. And it shows how that, over the next 10 years, would go down to $137 million.
Right. But again, we know
132
in the
million.
out years, there's things that are going to be added to this as things come.
Right, but that's still a $70 million drop that,
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any, and how does this factor in what's going to happen with WPCA, and how have you factored in the cost of that related to the,
if you go back to Exhibit 6, you see that the
Yeah.
WPCA is
Separate.
separate by itself, but the number on the far right is the combined number.
but what's the assumption there?
The assumption on the cost of their debt,
Sorry, the assumption on who's paying for that, fees versus taxes?
the assumption is fees.
This is all fees, no tax increases, but it's all, but I guess it doesn't matter because the town's it's going on the town's debt service
Correct.
anyway, however the revenue comes in.
Correct.
So this is assuming the full cost of that project. and How
Correct.
we get the revenue from that's a separate question.
Correct, yeah, there's,
Okay.
correct. And part of the funding is going to come from the state project. There's another schedule in here that breaks that out. I don't remember if the state's going to, the funding by the state excludes, not all of the project is qualifies for state funding.
Okay.
So the bulk of it is state funding, which that program is 2%, and the rest of it is bonding, which is
Right.
3%, which is what
And that's
most everything
Exhibit
is.
7 where they put out there.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have any questions on 6, 6A, and 7, and really the whole concept, I got you, of our debt service and what our debt balance is going to be over the next number of years? Mr. Walsh?
Bob, on that new schedule, 6A,
Yes, sir. Yes.
under new bonds, starting in fiscal year 21 is that an estimate of, you're going to have to take out $12 million of bonds for 3 years?
Correct.
And then, why is the assumption drop down to 8 million? Is it based on this schedule
Yes, sir.
here, which is
Exhibit-
Exhibit 6?
Ye-
So based on
It's-
6,
it's
you'll
based-
think
It's based upon, actually, it's based upon Exhibit 1,
Okay. Okay.
the
Based on the
actual
one.
schedule that shows the summation of what people have asked for.
But all those are
By
tying
year.
together, 1,
Correct.
6, whatever.
Correct.
So it's based
Yes.
on the fact that things in later years, we're not borrowing as much because we don't have many projects on the books right now
Correct.
that we know about.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
And then the other question was, the assumption on the WPCA project that's coming up, when are we going to be able to get to the decision on what's going to happen on who is going to pay for it, because
How do we fund it?
WPCA seems to be taking a stand already with their last meeting. Mr. Bateson, I know you were there. Why don't you explain? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Walsh. Yeah, I was at the most recent WPCA meeting, and it did concern me at that meeting, what I saw. They have taken a stand in the current rate that they set, that they are essentially funding the entirety of the project. And it also, too, when I looked back at the rate that was approved last year, was the same thing. They are acting that way. And I brought up at the table, I'm like, you know, this hasn't been determined. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm pretty sure that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, it was we'll get back to this because there was no urgency because the project wasn't before us. Then when I saw them crunching down the numbers and setting their rate, there's the number of the new treatment plant being baked into the rate. They're front-loading the rate, collecting money, setting it aside for this future project. My opinion at the table that night was that, you know, that's disingenuous to the process because you're basically already determining, you're making up people's mind for them, because when that project comes back before us, you're going to be told, oh, you already have $15 million set aside in the WPCA, and that's where the money is. But I just don't think that that's a decision that can be made in a room of a commission that's really not elected. I really think that that's something that needs to be discussed at this level, and I think they need direction as to where they're going. They already set the rate, so that, you know, door's already closed, but going forward, I don't think we can put it off much longer. I really think we need to tell them how it's going to be handled.
Mr. Mayor, were you involved with those discussions at all?
I was involved in preparing the information that those discussions were based on, yes, sir. And was not invited to the meeting, which is okay. I know, but it's
Well, you
okay.
also don't have to
But-
be invited. That's
Yeah. The couple of comments. One, if you look at the rates in our area, the highest rate per CCM, CCM, it's not CCM, it's cubic feet, cost per cubic foot, CCF, is Reading at $17.90. Fairfield's at $3.40. Ridgefield $4.40. It was just raised to $3.90. Ridgefield is at $4.40. Norwalk's, Stanford's at $5. Norwalk's $5.06 for commercial. Darien $5.65. Trumbull's close to $6. Bridgeport close to $6. Westport $6.20. Trumbull $6.30. Newtown $8.34. The town, if you talk to people in the business, the professionals that work with WPCAs on how you care for, how you manage, and how much work you do on an annual basis, and how you fund that work, it appears that we have been underfunding our plant and have not been, our fees for hookups has been lower than what they should be based upon industry standard formula and some other things. So we're working to gather that kind of information. So that's one piece. Second piece is the schedule that was given that has the rate increases is meant to achieve the payment of debt without having an excessive fund balance at any time. In other words, pay for this project. You don't want to, there's a balance you want to have. You don't want to collect fee revenue for plant renovations and building from today's people that's going to produce the waste control for the future generations. You want to maintain a generational consistency matching fees and costs. And that's what the schedule does. And it does. It has increases of approximately, I think about 6% per year for about 10 years. The fund balance actually gets down to about $2 or $3 million, and you would think you want like at least a 6-month fund balance or so, which is, so that's low, and then it climbs back up, and then it's at the level, and then we level it off. So those are the two comments.
Mr. Bateson, did you have anything? And we'll go to Mr. Matola.
What I saw in the calculation of the rate is that we are setting aside, the rate we established, you are collecting money for future plant renovations. That's what I saw. To Bob's point, I just think you're determining that the WPCA is paying for this project in its entirety without having it discussed. I just think that discussion needs to happen. This is a discussion we had in this town some 25 years ago.
Right.
It was unorthodox for us to pay for it the way we did 25 years ago by having the whole town. But this community stood up and said, everyone benefits from clean water. Everyone wants to pay for it. If you want to depart from that, I think that's something we need to discuss.
Okay. Mr. Matola.
I think, I'm just curious, are we, since it's the WPCA, and we definitely as a town bodies have to vote on how this is funded. Is this something that's in their,
Yeah,
more in their
no.
domain exclusively than?
No, well, I'll take that only because
Yeah.
we've had the discussion. It comes back to us because the town is bonding it under the full faith and credit of the town. So the bonding, so we have to know how it's paid for. And so at a point, we're going to have a discussion over whether it's fees, taxes, or a combination of both. And I see exactly where you're going, Mr. Bateson. And
Yeah.
we were unaware that they were raising the fees in anticipation, per your point.
Yeah, no, I was shocked when I got the memo. The memo
Yeah.
said the break-even rate for operational expenses down at the plant is $3.06. The rate was set at $3.90. That tells you how much we're setting aside.
Right.
Just to point, that $3.06 is given basic operations, does not include the necessary work that should be going on an ongoing basis.
So what your point is, Mr. Mayor, is that although there's a differential between the 390 and the 306, that differential in its entirety is not set aside money for the new plant. It's also putting money away for operational maintenance that needs to happen on an ongoing basis. Are we reading that correctly?
Correct.
Yeah, Bob's right in that point. I think we just did the East Trunk Line, or we just approved that for we didn't, the WPCA approved that for 1.7 million.
Right.
And there is a piece in here that's dedicated to the Easton Pump Station, which is coming up. But still, that's $1 million something. I mean, but still, if you do the math on the rate, there's still other monies being collected.
Right, so it's not quite as bad as it sounds
It's
when
not
you
a
look at
science.
390 versus 306, but it's also not,
Right, it is prudent to set aside money for, let's say, certain capital expenditures. Or capital, I should say, improvements to the system.
thank you. Anybody else? Mrs. Marmon?
I just have a more general question. I remember when the facilities plan was being discussed, are we having an opportunity to hear what the results of that plan is? Because you've got a proposed amount, but we haven't heard in terms of what that covers. Are they coming in front of our board, or are they going in front of the Board of Selectmen, and then we'll hear from them? What's the kind of?
Well, if you go to Schedule Exhibit 8, down at the bottom. Schedule Exhibit 8.
Eight.
It's a landscape exhibit.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Down at the bottom, you can see the issue date, the funding source and timing. So you can see that for 7/1/19, for the bond issue that'll go out about that time, we will need to bond approximately $5 million and borrow approximately $3 million from the state. So that's kind of when it all starts. So to answer your question, it's coming to a head quickly. And if you look at Exhibit 7, you can see what, roughly speaking, what's going to be done, the cost, the grant opportunities, and the net and the flow by year, by project. You can see that the total is $65 million.
Can Mr. DeWitt do a follow-up to your question, Mrs. Marmion? Go ahead, Mr. DeWitt.
So,
The way I interpret Mrs. Marmion's question is, this is what we're ponying up, but don't you want to know what WPCA's ponying
No,
up
this
for the
is-
total number?
This is the,
This is just us on this schedule.
no, this is the entire project, because we have to issue the debt for the entire project.
So we just so PCA just transfers
That's
money
the
into the
revenue
general
side.
fund?
They help pay the debt, that's the revenue side.
Okay, so there's,
We're looking at the total expense side, the revenue side, but it does raise Ed's point, that there's a sense of urgency here, because we're gonna start seeing
Right.
pre-work to be done
Right.
within the next number of months.
right, so
That's what I wanna know, how that number's-
so the funding for this
much
will
is
be
coming
coming
out of.
before the boards to be authorized within the next few months.
Right, but to that point, the decision point that we've been waiting on for several years is how are we gonna pay for this revenue-wise? And I think what you're hearing from our board is, we wanna know what the proposal is on the revenue side for who's gonna pay for what, before we start hearing, here's the request for $6 million, and we'll talk to you later about how it's gonna be paid for.
Well, I think this, the normal practice throughout the country is that the WPCA's do pay for these types of things. There's good reasons. One, in fact, it's become much more prevalent for across the country with all of the funding problems and the tax problems, is that users should pay the fees for the use.
I'm not looking to have the discussion
Right.
tonight.
Yeah, and I'm
looking
just
to
saying,
get
so
it
it's,
on
so
the
it's normal
agenda.
practice, and it's where the commission it seems to be going, so. But yes, but the three bodies definitely have to, at some
Can you
time
put that
agree.
on our, can you put that on our calendar, get with the first selectman, the board of selectmen, and then let's talk to the WPCA commission, and let's see when we get that in, and it might be a working meeting like this where we discuss all the options and opportunities. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that, Bob. When I saw everything and I saw the, I'm going to say pre-planning, the 4.5 million coming up next year, I thought we were a couple of years off on this project. Has this been accelerated? Is there a problem with DEEP? Is there something wrong right now?
No,
Okay.
yeah, no, the schedule you have, Exhibit 7, is pretty much the same as last year.
Yeah, but to Mr. Bateson's point, and maybe it's just old age, but I thought we were still a couple of years off.
a couple of years.
Right. And so this is now upon us, and I think we need to get more clarity and everybody needs to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Mr. Bateson, thank you. Mr. Walsh, it started with your question, so thank you for that. Is there
no
any other
problem.
follow-ups on this item?
In the next month, I mean, could you ask CCM to run to do a study for us to see how do the municipalities in Connecticut deal with this? They'll do it to
Yes,
us for free, right, based on the fees that we pay them?
Correct statement?
So just have them find out, give us some sense of how every community that has a WPCA and who has to pay for this size, it doesn't have to be 60-something million dollars, but a large renovation
Great. Thank you.
deals with it.
And good idea. Anybody else? All right, Mr. DeWitt?
Just to Mr. Bateson's point, last year's Exhibit 8, we were only ponying up $550,000, 2018, 2019.
Right, so this is.
This
moved
year,
forward.
now we're $5,850,000.
So maybe it is an old age.
I'm sorry, what was the comment?
Last year's Exhibit 8.
You're moving it forward, it looks like, is what.
Yeah, last year's Exhibit 8, 2018, 2019, total cash flow required was $550,000, and this year, 2018, 2019, is $5,850,000. I'm just comparing, if anybody hasn't figured it out, I'm comparing last year to this year's.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
the
DeWitt.
upfront, every
Thank
other
you.
number is the same, to Mr. Mayor's, going out, every other number is the same.
And then we can start to Mr. Michelangelo when he comes up about that, whether something's been moved up. When he comes up for other things.
Sure. Anything else on this? All right, let's, so we went through kind of Exhibit 6, we've gone 7, we've gone 8, we've gone 6A, right? Any questions on the debt service levels? Everybody understands the 10% to 20 years, all that, right? Okay, so let's go to, I propose we go to Exhibit 3 now, which is the adds and subtracts, really the changes year over year. So, now remember, I just want to give us a caveat, right? The purpose of this evening is not to get into the nitty-gritty of any specific topic. It's to get a global view of what our capital needs look like based on bottoms up, what's coming from the department heads and the first selectman. We're not voting on any of these projects. By looking at the capital plan, we're not saying we're going to do this bridge, we're going to do this building, we're going to do this roof. It's just what might our needs look like over the next 10 to 15 years. All right? So go ahead, Mr. Mayor, let's go to Exhibit 3.
Yeah, so, if you go down to increase, for example, you see the clubhouse renovation, that's $4.1 million. That's, if you remember, after we made the adjustment last year, that got in there.
Well, that was an error last year.
Right, but
That wasn't
after we
yeah.
put it in at 3 million, as was pointed out earlier in the conversation, in response to Mr. DeWitt's noticing of the difference in the numbers. So these numbers are just the changes. So it's the number that's in this year's is 7.1 million. So it's 3 million from the final last year to 4.1 million, to 7.1, says an increase of 4.1. So these are changes, they're not totals.
All right, and on that issue, because it's going to be front and center, our October meeting will be held up at Smith Richardson. So we can, I want to look at getting in there and looking around the clubhouse early before the meeting, and then actually having the meeting there itself to discuss this very topic. Primarily, the committee's going to come before us, tell us about the work they've done to date, why the number is the number. A caveat, after having sat with them, that 7.1 number was a preliminary number. They may or may not have better information for us at our October meeting, but we're going to do it up there at Smith Richardson, okay?
And we're putting in this latest quote that they gave us, the
Correct.
7.1, because
It's best
their
available
number
information.
in February that they presented to us was a lot different.
A lot different.
lower.
Yes, it was, sir.
So I just want to be clear that just because we're putting the 7.1 in here doesn't mean we're approving 7.1 or they have that in their bank account.
No, I think the chair makes that very clear every year.
All right, go ahead, Mr.
Can I just ask
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor one global question? As we go through these, can you just let us know whether any of these numbers you think they're accurate, carryover? I mean, I know some of them are increases and decreases, but, you know, I'm going to be asking the Board of Ed to do the same thing as they go through their figures, because there's a tendency sometimes not to add, you know, some type of inflationary amount on as these things are further out.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, you know, the instructions to Ms. Saxel when she met with people was to make sure that those thoughts and calculations were considered in the calculation. As far as going through each of the individual items, I think that is much better accomplished by addressing a specific question to the specific department head who would be responsible for the item.
Okay, so let's go down the schedule here. We've got 4 items removed. Why were they removed? Is there a global reason why they were removed?
Well, I think we can talk to Mr. Calabrese about 1, 2, and 3. And I'll be quickly while he's coming up. Number 4, if you remember, that got transferred to the operations budget.
Yep. But we see another one down below, so I don't understand that. But go ahead, Mr.
Yep,
Calabrese.
I believe number 1 is the tennis center lights.
Yeah.
Lights are functioning currently as is. We're still well within our 20-year lease with them. So at this time, I felt it was prudent just to take it off the schedule for now. It may go back on at some point in the future, but right now it wasn't a pressing item, so I removed it. 2 and 3, I believe, were ball field renovations with Public Works with, and Joe Michelangelo's up here to address those as well.
Mr. Michelangelo.
So when reviewing the Riverfield ball field, it's a combination of the usage of the field and some of the work we've done over the years. So previously that was heavily used by youth football. Football does not use that anymore. There's 2 Little League fields there, but it's a lower level field. We've made quite a few improvements over the years through our operating budget. So when we looked at it this year, we felt that given the use of the 2 Little League fields, that fields are adequate for the current usage, athletic usage, and it doesn't require a capital improvement at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Similarly with Dwight Ball Field, reviewed the usage, which I believe is adult softball and travel soccer. Once again, we've done some improvements incrementally over the years. So in looking at the usage and the current condition of the field, we don't feel it warrants the capital upgrade anymore.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anybody? All right, we know the command vehicle. Why don't we, hang on, gentlemen, I don't know
Yeah.
if you've got to stay up for any of these, so let's go through the reductions, the senior center design, transfer station, Old Town Hall. What's going on with all these, Mr. Mayor?
I think Mr. Michelangelo is,
Okay. The senior center design has been carved up. Previously, there was a larger number for the design and a larger number for the construction. One thing that Mr. Bowman has been working on is a comprehensive asset management plan that looks at about 20 town buildings, which you'll see later. There's totals, I believe, 4.5 or 5 million. So in looking at the improvements related to the senior center, there's quite a bit of improvements related to that as part of the asset management. Large part of the windows, HVAC, things like that, the things that pay for itself. So the carved out, so things that the asset management program won't take care of, is redoing the laboratories, which are still an elementary school quality laboratory, getting the kitchen up to snuff. So the design has been reduced since we're not encompassing as much of a construction project on the senior center.
Questions from anybody on this? Okay, let's go to transfer station.
Transfer station, I believe, was previously a $400,000 request. We've done quite a bit of work there over the last several years. The 2 concrete floors, the tipping floors, have been replaced just because they needed to be replaced. We replaced several the 2 compactors there have been replaced. So we've lessened the project due to stuff we've done through operating budget over the years.
Questions there? All right, what about the town hall renovation?
Similarly, it was envisioned as a larger project. The asset management program tackles many of the issues that were originally incorporated in the larger project.
So question on the asset management program, is that running through operating expense now, or what's going on there? Because I don't see that, where am I?
He's looking at these 2 down here.
Yeah, are those
$4
2?
million worth of
Yeah.
expense.
Yeah.
So previously it was listed as just an asset management thing as a ballpark, I believe, just as a placeholder. And now it's Mr. Bowman will present a more comprehensive plan for once again our 19 largest town buildings.
Okay.
Okay, so phase 2 will always stay the same. We'll know what buildings and renovations are part of that, or
They're
do you-
well-defined.
or can you pop things in and out of there as you please?
Well, the buildings itself, like I said, I think it's our 19 largest town buildings. But as far as the so there's been an overview of them, but as far as the the specific of what elements, those need to be refined before we we do a construction project.
yeah, there's,
I guess what the question is you're taking them from all these individual projects and putting them into an asset management master plan, right? When we get asked to fund that master plan, I would assume there's going to be sufficient detail around those plans, and those dollars aren't going to be fungible
Correct.
to move between projects.
correct.
And
Okay.
there's already I wouldn't say a well-defined project, but there's a pretty good preliminary scope of what goes into that, what gets covered for that.
Okay, I'm sure Mr.
Project.
Bowman, who's in the back, can talk to that when it's, okay. Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, and the total change sheet some of these numbers, the reductions or additions could be anywhere from 2018 out to 2026, correct?
Correct.
It would be kind of nice to know what year they came out of and went into. Like, for example, the old town hall renovation, did that help us for next year, or is that 2025?
Right, in other words, put a date.
Yeah, just where, you know, I guess what I'm kind of curious about is, are we massaging in this sheet, are we massaging the next 2 years of the waterfall, or 2025 and 2026, which would make me feel a little less, confident, right?
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick thing to you. I'll call it old age. I didn't know about an asset management program. This is the first time I'm hearing of this term. So from what I'm hearing, we're moving away from individually specific projects, and we're going to have a pool. Like every year I'm going to see one number, asset management program. My concern there is, from an oversight committee such as yourself, there's going to be a degree of control lost.
Well, that's why my question was,
Well,
are these going to be
Okay.
well-defined?
Maybe I missed this conversation or this meeting
never
where
happened.
asset management program
No.
has been discussed, but I think it needs a lot more
Yeah,
discussion.
Yeah, it's basically, and it's something that the DPW, Mr. Michelangelo and Mr. Bowman have been working on for a while, but you're absolutely right, it has not bubbled up to discussion at the town meetings. As I understand it, it's primarily energy and heating and ventilation and air conditioning and those types of
Tell you what,
projects.
let's do this.
So is this the Johnson Control Project all over again?
Well, I wasn't here then.
It involves much more, it involves more building systems than simply HVAC controls.
Okay, so I'm mistaken. It's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it was individual
don't
building
know.
projects that got, okay. I'm confused. I think we need more discussion.
Mr. Bowman, welcome. Did you see how fast Mr. Calabrese left that chair?
He's learning quickly.
Joe's going now, too.
Basically, we've been doing these individualized programs, like you said, and the Johnson Control Program, that was the base, you're right. We did that program 15 years ago. Technology's changed a lot since then, stuff we didn't do then, the HVAC parts are wearing out now, and windows, there's all kinds of different needs that we try to put together. Okay, so about 2 years ago, we convinced UI to fund a $50,000 study to do this. And EarthCore, who was the contractor we chose, did this $50,000 study and created,
Can you
based on a
speak-
lot of...
Mr. Bowman, can you use the mic? It's a little...
Just pull a little closer.
Yeah.
And in the next month or so, you'll see an outline of that plan. It's coming together pretty quickly. I want to present it to the Board of Selectmen soon. And what we will be doing is looking for an RFQ for vendors to come out and give us proposals. Say, here's the basic plan. Our consultant said, this is what needs to be done in these 19 buildings. We want you to look at that, see whether you agree with it or not, and come up with ideas to either go along with it, improve upon it, etc. That'll be an RFQ. Where the RFQ then we'll pick and do an RFP for a proposal to implement these plans. And again, the $5 million plus is what the consultant has suggested already.
Tom, I'll just follow up. I must have heard it wrong, because this is like an indoor environment issue. I get that. I took it 5 minutes ago, this conversation, that we were taking small building projects and putting it under an asset management program. That's the way I heard that being explained. I think Mr. Bowman is basically saying, this is the update of the Johnson Control from
We
years
have
ago.
added some to it, though. For example, we believe now that we can do these programs similar to Johnson Controls, but better. There's better technology, and we'll have a plan that says the energy portion of it will have a positive cash flow in year one and have a payback of less than 10 years. We'll be able to add to it some roofs, windows, which don't have any payback, and put that in it, and because the payback is so good, we'll still be able to have a payback of the total non-energy and energy part of it in under 10 years and have a positive cash flow to year one. The company will be asked to guarantee those savings for all that, not just during the beginning, but for 20 years. With all the other energy projects we have, whether it's solar, whether it's the fuel cell, or whether we're our generators, we ask for a 20-year maintenance agreement with them. this company that's responsible for that total facility for 20 years. We're going to put that into this plan, saying you're going to design, build, and operate it for 20 years, and you're going to be responsible to maintain it for 20 years. Now there's some places where it will break down and they won't be their responsibility. We'll have to come back and get money to replace it 15 years from now. But that'll be spelled out pretty quickly, so that we'll have one plan in place, one vendor in place who will provide the maintenance, and he will do the maintenance similar to the way we do with Johnson Control. He will train our staff to maintain the building. The work they're guaranteeing will be 90% performed by town staff. Only the stuff that's real high-tech that we're not qualified for will the company be asked to,
Great. So what the numbers we're looking at here is funding this asset management program. And what we're seeing is reductions out of individual programs and putting them into the bucket of this asset management program, which we will be presented at a later date, which will give all the details of what you're trying to accomplish with the 19 buildings.
Correct. Once we get the details, you'll get the details.
Right. That's what I figured.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Bowman, the $1.75 million, this is how this whole conversation started, that is being reduced from Old Town Hall renovations. Where is that work going to get done? In what phase?
We look at it as a 3-year construction program. We're not going to do $5 million worth of work in 1 year. So within that 3-year period, the work at Old Town Hall will be done. We don't know whether it be first, second, or third year at this point. That'll include things like replacing the windows, which are historic windows that we found a contractor who has been approved by Historic District Commission in other towns who actually has a way to replace those windows, adding a plate within the green, creating a tri-plate window and putting them back in place. That'll be done. The HVAC in the building will be done. We also did a thermal study of all the buildings, and we know where things are leaking. If hot air is going out and cold air is coming in. Old Town Hall work will be done there for that. So there's a number of, a whole bunch of things that are in here. So in Old Town Hall, yes.
Okay, so that project's going to be split up between phases 1, 2, and 3? Is that what you're saying?
No, the $5 million project will be split up, but we'll do a
Yes.
whole building at a time. Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the other things we realized as after 15 years of doing this. It's a mistake to take these buildings and try and do one thing. Then something else goes wrong. You got to do the whole building. You do the whole building, then you're looking at, well, the whole building has the same current technology and the same ability to manage, and that's a much more efficient way of doing things.
Mrs. Eckholm?
So is this just maintenance of the building, like controls with heating, or is this ripping out carpet, doing a space analysis, deciding whether or not?
This is the $5 million is all capital replacement. There will be a maintenance contract for 20 years. And in that maintenance, we know how much maintenance we're doing now, what it costs. We believe we'll save $200,000 a year in maintenance by doing this program and having a 20-year contract. So there'll be savings in electricity, there'll be savings in maintenance also.
But this doesn't encompass an analysis of the space we have, for example, behind the senior center, the health department's still in trailers and getting them out of trailers.
Well, it does.
Okay, so that's all in there in
Yeah.
this plan. And that'll come before each of the town bodies for discussion
correct.
and approval. And when do you anticipate the first phase of that, in the next month?
I would say that, if we do an RFP, Board of Selectmen has to approve the concept of doing the RFQ. If that happens, we'll be doing that this fall, and probably by Christmas time, we'll know a good idea what that project will look like in total and how long it will take to complete. So in the next 4 or 5 months, we'll have that done.
So you guys have met with all the department heads, discussed needs, forecasted things for the future, and
Correct.
what we need to look like as a whole?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Becker?
So we're going to do all that for 500 in the first year, 2 million in the second, and 2 million in the third. So $4.5 million is going to accomplish something that, as an example, Town Hall was in here as 1.75. So,
Well, I'm not saying we're going to do everything that's in the old town. I don't know what was in the original old town hall.
well, that's what we're trying.
I don't know. I'm just saying the energy portion of it we're taking care of.
I get it, but the problem is the energy portion is 4.5, but you're saying that it now encompasses all these other.
Well, I'm
buildings.
not saying it encompasses what was in the 1.75 for Old Town Hall, because I have no idea what was in that.
Okay, and where did it go then? Because clearly the bulk of it
Right, so the only.
still exists somewhere else?
Yes. The
or-
only specific projects that were reduced were the Old Town Hall and the Senior Center project.
Okay.
And that was basically picking off, so Ed mentioned the UI funded study that had energy improvements in those buildings. Basically picking off which ones of those were specifically related to those buildings.
All right. So they're going to come back with other amounts outside of the 4.5 at some stage to do the remaining portions of that. Because clearly, if it doesn't include the carpeting and all the other things that are related to the renovation, it's got to exist somewhere. So it doesn't exist in here now.
Well,
The energy portions do, but we don't know what the additional amount, or is it somewhere that we're not?
yeah,
'Cause that's fine.
There is a figure, for instance, for Old Town Hall. So it was reduced, and I
Okay.
could find that in,
So where?
okay. Yeah, so in the 2021, there's 1.5 million for Old Town Hall.
Okay.
So that 1.5 million covers the stuff that is not included as part of the asset management.
So that portion will be, so that will remain,
Correct.
and that will be the so some amount essentially is part of this 4.5. Okay. And do we have, I mean, outside of sort of all the different projects sprinkled throughout here, do we have something for the town that's similar to this, which is what the Board of Ed puts together every year, which sort of lays out, similar to you say, there's 19 or 20 assets. It might be 20 years from now to do something in an asset, but what's the overall sort of plan? Because we see them sprinkled throughout the waterfall, but the BOE does that too, and also nice and neatly has an actual plan that they release every year, that they update every year, that they go by, that the boards go by.
No, one does not exist.
Okay.
I do think that's a good idea, but one does not
Rich,
exist.
yeah, I think Rich White at one point in concert maybe with, I'm not sure exactly who, but when he was director, had actually made a plan. I have a copy of it from years ago. It'd be great if you guys did something like that or considered it, because I think it'd be very helpful to answer even some of these questions.
I think we
with
could
all
build
these-
on the asset and energy management plan and add that to it, and you have a complete
Perfect
plan.
starting
I
point.
think that's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
We would encourage that. Mr. Walsh?
Will we get a document, are you guys drafting a document that says asset management phase 2 includes this, and this is the breakdown of $2 million?
Yes, we will.
When will we have that?
Again, sometime in the fall.
In the fall? Okay.
Right now, we have our good guess at it. Once we get an RFP, get a vendor on it, evaluates that, sometime this fall, we'll come back and you can see exactly what it is, because we'll be asking for the money, too. So,
Okay.
but you have building by building, item by item.
Okay.
Yep, that's what we asked about earlier.
And on the same thing with phase 1, or do you know what phase 1 is going to be already?
That was just an estimate how we're going to break it down. There's no design, this is going to be a design-build contract, so there's not going to be an engineering fee. Contract's going to be with a vendor who will give us one price to do everything. We'll agree to that price. We will check, he will have to give us prices for every piece of equipment. We will agree or not agree on the piece of equipment, we'll agree or not agree on the construction cost as we go along. So, and it'll be a design-build contract, there's no way you can ask for any more money, that's it, it's fixed price.
Okay, and that's, when you say phase 1, the phase 1 that you list here, where you put in an increase of $500,000.
It's not for anything specific, it's just saying, taking that project and saying it's gonna be done over 3 years, and the first part will probably be done over 6 months, so it's a smaller amount than the second or third year. Nothing specific.
Okay, I think we just need some type of basic document
Yep.
and somehow to explain exactly what phase 1 means.
It's coming.
Okay, good. That's so that when we get to next year, and if it has to be amended year by year, like if we come here next year and you need to either increase it or decrease it, you would specify what the reasoning is and
Yeah.
why either money's being added or subtracted.
Right, I look at it as a 20-year document, and we get the complete document like we were talking about, over time, there's gonna be changes, there's gonna be
Mhm.
new technology, and we're gonna come back and say, maybe we should do this or that, and we'll either
All right.
approve or not approve. Yeah, it'll be a
We
living
look-
document, really.
Fine. We look forward to seeing the plan. We don't,
We have the words, not the numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Kings Highway Phase 3. That's being reduced by a lot, isn't it?
By 500.
500,000, what's going on there?
A lot of the next ones pertain to Bill Hurley, so I'll call him up here to specifically answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman, appreciate it very much. We look forward to seeing your plan when it's available. I would hope you would say that. Hey, Mr. Hurley.
Oh, Mr. Early.
What's going on? Tell us about Kings Highway.
Kings Highway would be an extension of the existing grant that we have now, which takes the sidewalk improvements from Chambers Street to Villa Avenue, and then so it would go from Villa Avenue to the Bridgeport line. The reduction is just based on, basically current costs of the existing project. We have not applied for that yet.
And we wouldn't do it if we don't get it granted, is that?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Any other questions on this item? We'll go to the phone system. This is a reduction based on better bids. We talked about this previously, correct, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions on the phone system right now? All right, senior center renovation. Let's go to that. Significant reduction there.
So same concept with Town Hall, because many of the improvements are envisioned in the asset management project.
Okay. Fairfield Woods Library elevator.
This is, there's the asterisk, this was
Yep.
approved last year. So that just shows the difference. When I was here last year, I think we estimated at 275. Once we got into more detailed engineering, when we did the ask in January, February, it was $50,000 higher, so that just reflects that.
Okay, and the clubhouse renovation?
Can I ask him a quick
Yeah,
question? Was there
please.
any grant you could find for ADA stuff for that project?
We looked into one with the State Library Board, but it wasn't a good match for our facility, just, so we asked the questions. I'd say the process was, the money wasn't there, there was a small amount available, and the hurdles we would have had to jump through would have adversely affected our schedule.
Okay.
It's in design now, we plan to be out to bid before Christmas with construction in the spring to avoid the school elevator.
Great, thank you.
All right, clubhouse renovation. We've kind of discussed, I do want to put a little bug out there on this one, though. As you could see by the reaction, there was a bit of sticker shock when everybody got the 7.1 million. One of the best conversations to have around town is when someone, and invariably it happens in a grocery store when I'm with my 12-year-old, someone wants to talk about why the town's in the golf business. And it's great to be able to say that actually our golf courses make money. And then that conversation goes very well after that. And as we've said a number of times, done a very nice job with the 10-year plan on the golf courses on improving them, rounds are up, prices, and they make money. I think this board is going to be looking for what's the business case that's going to support the 7.1 million renovation or rebuild of the clubhouse. And it'd be nice to know that the Golf Commission is working in concert with the Clubhouse Commission to put together the financial case, the business case as to why we want to continue to invest in this asset. And I think we've asked about that before. I think when we put the funding together for this originally, we talked about that. So as we go forward here, particularly with the large dollars we're talking about, I just want to be forewarned that I think that's going to be an important piece of that discussion is what's the incremental revenue and what is the revenue that's going to be preserved by that. Mrs. Iacono, you had something on this topic?
Yeah, so we just came from an RTM meeting where they presented the project, and Selectman Bateson and I were able to attend the Golf Commission meeting along with Mr. Curley, and they produced a profit and loss statement that you might want to ask for from the chairman and get that for your body, because I found that to be a very helpful document. I requested the moderator get it.
Right. Is this projections moving forward after the renovation?
No. Current.
Well, we see that every year.
Yeah.
we see that document. It'd be great,
We
what I'm
have-
asking for is
We haven't
the...
seen that at our level, so I found that very helpful, but
Yeah, we see that all the time, as I recall.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. To chime in on your point, I think Ms. Iacona and I attended the Golf Commission when Mr. Curley presented that evening, and our role there was just to address the Golf Commission and saying that exactly what you said tonight is going to be a talking point when this works its way through the approval process, that this is not just a taxpayer expense. We're looking for, let's say, a 50-50 partnership with the Golf Commission that, yes, the residents of Fairfield understand the golf program, are dedicated to it, and want to provide this service at a profit for the town. But at the same time, we want to see a dedicated commitment from the Golf Commission that the golfers themselves are going to be putting up funds through, an extra dollar for a round or whatever they determine. But that was one of the points we went, because we see that as that's going to be a talking point to get this through the approval process.
Thank you. I'm glad it seems like we're all on the same page. We look forward to seeing the analysis. Anybody else on this item? Mr. DeWitt?
Just a process point for Mr. Mayor. Your document says that we're increasing from September of 2017 4.1 million. But we're actually increasing it 7.1 million because it was not in the...
They redid it, Chris, and reissued it. You're looking at the one that was issued that night. Subsequent to that meeting, they reissued it with it included because it was an error.
Not the next month.
No, he emailed it to us like a couple days after the meeting. It was an omission on their part.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're looking at the printout from the meeting itself.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Anybody else on this item? All right, South Benson dock renovation.
In the previous waterfall schedule, there was 400,000 identified. The Park Rec has a subcommittee doing a study on the future needs of the marina. The study is still in progress. It's not completed by any means, but a lot of the numbers they have talked about are in excess of the 400,000. So as a number for now, we increased it 200,000, but once again with the caveat that their work is still ongoing.
And again, I'd raise kind of the same issue here for these types of projects where they're, not fire, safety, that type of thing. We need to look at what the economic impact of these renovations will be for the town. Anybody?
Yeah, so when are they going to be making decisions? I mean, they presented to us about, a year ago? Maybe?
They talked about it a year ago, yes.
That they were going to go through, research different methods of putting in. Have they narrowed down their choices, or where are we going with this?
So far, they had an engineering firm come in, Race Coastal Engineers, who took an evaluation of a complete site survey of the marina right now, laid out, I believe, 9 different options for configurations and reductions in number of slips, all different types of things you could possibly think of. They do have that narrowed down, I believe, to 3 options right now, and they're still working on this as part of their 10-year plan. So they're working, they're making progress, but again, they were waiting on those drawings, which they just got only about 2 months ago, so they only meet once a month.
Do they honestly think $600,000 is going to cover the cost for the work?
For the entire project that they're
Yeah.
looking to do? No. I don't believe so. I mean, we've heard all kinds of numbers, but we haven't hashed those numbers out. Again, this is just the engineers giving their best estimate on different options. So,
Is any of the plans $600,000?
no.
Then why are we putting 600,000, adding to the 4 and adding another 200? Why wouldn't we just add whatever their minimum plan number is into this project and have a realistic number? So that we
Well,
don't have
again,
another golf club thing where we're off by $4 million.
Well, let me rephrase that, because the 600,000 may actually be maybe sufficient if they're just replacing what they have, docks that are there now. So that would be, I guess, sufficient, if that's the number. But if they're revising and reconfiguring things, you're looking at anywhere things that they've thrown out there, 1.2 million to 6.2 million. So again, there's a wide range of different options. So they're looking at everything, but trying not to change things drastically. You know, the ideal marina right now, and again, when they get to that stage and they start presenting this kind of stuff, the ideal marina down there cuts the marina capacity in half, and that's not something that they're willing to do. So.
All right, I think that as we go forward, when they start getting closer to these decisions, we have to up this number to what they think it's going to be, at least
Agreed.
something realistic. We're trying as a board, and we've talked to Bob about this as well, is to put realistic numbers in here, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be 600. It sounds like the minimum number is going to be 1.2. So I think we, you know, when you talk to them, find out what that's going to be, and if we need to up that, we need to up it.
Yeah, I wasn't about to put 6.2 in here.
No, I'm not saying 6.2, but I think a 1.2 would be a nice start.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
All right. Anybody else on this one? All right, let's go to Bronson Sturgis, the bridge construction. Thank you, Mr. Calabrese, again.
Thank you.
All right, what typically has happened here is we split Bronson and Sturgis into two bridges. One which is listed for the year fiscal year 2020, 2021, and it would be $200,000 to reconstruct the arch. Is an arch there, and we would make that into a box culvert. So it's estimated for $200,000 there. And then the Sturgis Road Bridge, again pending grant money, we would do the design in 2022 and the construction in 2023. So it's been pushed back a little bit. The rating is somewhere between a 4 and a 5. And in 2022 or 2021, we would apply for the state local bridge program, trying to get 50% reimbursement for that. So the numbers altered a little bit and changed, but we were able to push the Sturgis Road bridge back. And just if I may, just do a real quick recap. The town's responsible for 50 bridges. The state routinely inspects 23 of the larger bridges that are in town or that we share with other towns. And obviously, based on those bridge reports is how we, go by priority. It certainly helps when there's the federal local bridge program, but there's only like a list of 2 or 3 currently on that list that we get 80% reimbursement. The state local bridge program, last year and this year, well, last year they cut it off because of the fiscal situation. And even for this year, it's very severely limited. So it's going to be highly competitive to get that for the next year. Hopefully, when they straighten out their house of cards, we'll have a better chance of getting grants in the future. And with the bridges, it's always hard because it's based on the grants, the condition of the bridge, and then even sometimes another municipality. If things are going well and they value the bridge as much as we do, we get the agreements in place and we move forward. Sometimes there's a little friction, or the other town has so many bridges that are in worse shape, even though that might be one of our worst, but their inventory might be worse than ours, and so therefore they may hold off the bridge for another year or two.
Okay.
But when we do share a bridge, we are both responsible for the bridge.
Thank you.
Oh, and then if
Yeah.
I can,
Well, hang on, Bill.
Okay, sure, I'm sorry.
You made the sale.
No, there's something else that's not on the list. I just wanted to give you a heads up if I can.
What is it?
Speaking of grants, the town was just announced that the town was awarded the Southport Connectivity Grant. It was listed last year, but it was never presented because the grant was on hold. Well, we just got word that it will, jumpstart again. And so for the connectivity grant and the one lot SIP, for the new lot SIP grant, Grassmere Avenue, I just wanted to give the Board of Finance, I know you guys like this, heads up that sometime in the fall, I'll be approaching, or will be approaching the board with these two grants, but I wanted to
That's
use
great.
this opportunity to give you like a 1 or 2 month advance notice.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Go ahead.
Yeah, quick thing, Bill, Bronson Road, which bridge is that? Is that the one down near Perry's Mill Pond?
No, it's the one more towards the Greenfield Hill hamlet there, the little village. There's actually 2 bridges there. There's one at Cedar, and then there's one just at the last little strip mall or little shopping area there. There's an office there. There's a small little bridge there. It's probably no longer than that table, but
Okay.
it's an arch bridge, and it's listed as, matter of fact, we just got this bridge report. September 6th, it was mailed out. We got it about 4 days ago, so, and it did confirm what engineering had looked at, that bridge is listed in poor shape.
Okay, and where's the Sturgis Bridge design? Where's Sturgis Bridge?
What do you mean by where? Like what year or
No,
where?
where?
Where is it?
Yeah.
That's the one by Perry's Mill. That's the
That's the
stone arch
Sturgis
bridge.
Bridge.
Yeah, that's the Sturgis.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on this? So we did the town building improvement. We spoke about that. We're going to go down to the newer items. We did the clubhouse design. The command vehicle, I'm confused. This is out on the top and back in the bottom. What's the story here?
Yeah, when I noticed that, and by the time I got around to asking Ms. Axel about that, her number, it was baked in her numbers, so I just let it go, but we have Deputy Chief Dunn here, because I'm not sure.
Okay,
You know,
so we
unless
just
unless
saved
they
the
assume
text.
it's, because unless they're assuming the next one's going to cost a whole bunch more and therefore qualifies, I don't really know.
Okay, so we just saved the taxpayer $106,000 on this. Right?
I don't know, does the chief want to comment?
Right. Right.
This is a new one. You want to come up? It's $106,000 as a command vehicle. Yeah, I know that, but it got it.
There's no ladder truck
Yeah,
listed here.
there's no ladder truck listed here.
All right,
So
so
maybe-
we're looking at a schedule that takes the 106 out on the top, puts it back in the bottom when we said take it out.
Yeah, I don't-
And then you're referencing a ladder truck, and there's no new ladder truck listed here. And we just bought a
Ladder truck has been,
It was it was listed previously, so I think he just
Ladder
means
truck's been
a
here-
new one, not
ladder truck's been
new
here a couple of
project.
years.
Okay, I was just gonna say, you're not asking for another new ladder truck, right?
We're asking in the in the new capital budget, we're asking for a $1.2 million for replacement for ladder 2, and that should be in here.
It's not.
That-
It's not.
That command vehicle was last year's.
Not new.
this was not in here last year?
1.2
Was you
here,
saying that's not
1.2
in there
there,
last
that's
year?
what the serious money after will be.
Yeah, we just replaced a ladder truck. Right? Yeah,
Right.
we just got, we just took ours.
Yeah, but that was in last year, though. I know it's this year's, but it was in last year's.
600,000 split over 2 years?
It was in last
Yes.
year's.
I don't know, maybe they moved it, and what we did is we might get.
Well, it's not new to.
I think that was in last year's documents, but,
They may have moved it up, it's in this,
so maybe the one,
This is why this thing needs dates.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
yeah,
It was in last year, 2021.
yeah.
Split up over 2 years.
Yeah.
619.
Right, but it's not, so you moved it up though a year.
yes, I think they moved it up.
Well, but the ladder truck is not new, that's what I'm saying.
Last year's was the 106.
Last year was
Command, there was a
$600,
command vehicle.
Yeah, so,
It's under 2019 too.
So it's a couple years
Under
out.
the capital over $1 million.
Well, it's listed as 1.2,
Okay,
and then
well,
it's split under 2
Yeah,
years.
no, I get it, but if
Yeah.
we get, what I want to know is, we just funded a ladder truck and took possession of it. We all saw it, like last year, I think it was.
No, that was the,
That was
no.
the Quint.
No, that was the Quint, and that was
Oh, okay.
2 years ago. Last year's, we came before you for this $106,000 for the.
I remember
command
that.
vehicle, Right, and you took that out, and we put that in
Right.
operating budget, so that's in process right now.
Right.
So for this year,
It's the ladder truck, which is paid for over two
Right.
cycles.
I remember
But
that.
It's starting, I believe it's starting now for 1920. That's the 1920, we're asking for the
Which
1.2.
for 1920 will be for next year.
Well, yes, but this is the process. where we
Yeah,
start
yeah, yeah,
now,
no,
right?
I get it, I get it. But that's
Yeah.
the same way it was, it's the same way it was in last year's documents. We haven't moved anything.
Correct.
So this isn't new, this isn't an adjustment, the timing's not different.
Right.
Right,
So it sounds, that's what it appears to be.
right. Okay, thank you, Chief, appreciate that. Okay, Congress Street repair.
Again, as mentioned before, we get these reports, and on the latest one, they did list the bridge in poor condition, but rather than do a full replacement, the engineering department feels we can do a repair instead. Although there won't be any grant money, it's significantly lower than obviously a new bridge would cost.
Questions on this? Yeah,
The Congress Street Bridge, which one's this?
That one is behind the Merritt Parkway gas station. It's on Congress Street, over the Mill River.
Gotcha.
It's
So that's not
actually-
the one that's closed right now over the Merritt Parkway?
No.
Okay. Is that a state bridge, by the way?
The one over the Merritt Parkway is, yes.
So with no local dollars invested in that?
No.
Okay.
Downtown Fairfield resiliency using green infrastructure.
This would be a grant that we've applied for. There'll be no local funding. We did a study about a year or so ago using another grant and identified some improvements there. So that would specifically be on Unclewood Place, Sanford, Miller. But once again, that would all be all grant money. And so once again, we'd pursue it if we received the grant.
What kind of work are you talking about on those roads?
Yeah, all infiltration type measures so that all the rainwater gets absorbed into the
Is that
ground.
the project that's about to start, kind of an addition to that?
Correct.
Okay.
Well above and beyond that. So in,
Well,
in
okay.
capacity and the reworking the whole streets with planters and underground systems.
It expands the scope and, the layout of the current one.
Okay.
The current one, meaning the one we just approved a year or two ago? Didn't we just invest
Yeah,
something down
all the
there?
equipment just showed up in a state of Connecticut sign on Sherman Green. All the
Yeah.
infiltrators, all the piping.
Yeah, that
So
was
I
the
got-
steeper grant. Yeah, that's right, from a year or two ago, yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
this is predominantly focused on stormwater?
Correct.
Why is it listed if it's a grant?
Well, I think what it should be is noted that it's a grant, we have to approve it, so we have to fund it.
So we recognize their exposure even though, got it.
Right, but I think it should be noted here.
Yeah, well, if you look at the schedule, the detailed
Separately.
schedule
Yeah.
lists reimbursements, grant reimbursements, and
Yeah,
when
it just
shows up in-
doesn't note it on this schedule.
On
as
this
we're going
schedule, correct.
through. Stratfield pedestrian streetscape improvements.
This is also a grant-related one that Mark Barnhart has been pursuing right at the four corners of the center of Stratfield. So depending, receiving a state DCD grant, that would be the project at the four corners there in the Stratfield Village Center.
Okay. Bronson Road arch to box culvert.
I have a question about
Oh,
that.
yeah, go ahead,
Excuse
Ms.
me.
Sargent.
Mr. Michelangelo, and Mr. Barnhart, I believe, on the Stratfield scape, I understand it's somewhat of a public-private partnership with about three funding sources. There's the developer of Sunrise, local Stratfield Village Association fundraising, the grant. I think that's it, right?
I'll defer to Mark.
Yes, there are three sources. One would be the grant from the state. The second would be town funds, as well as in-kind services for construction administration. And then the third would be private sources of funding, both from the Stratfield Village Association and from other private parties.
So for the town share, I mean, is there a plan proposal already? I mean, I've seen some mock-ups, but is there anything that,
We would propose to use the town funds to finance the design work to advance the conceptual design plans to full-scale construction plans and specifications for bidding purposes and to secure any necessary permits.
And the timeline on the project unknown?
Well, actually, it's been accelerated because we just have received word that we may actually receive a state grant funding this year. And in fact, there might be an announcement as of this week.
Thank you.
It's so nice to know the state is in such good fiscal shape that they can dole out funds more quickly. All right, must be an election year.
Will this, what you're talking about, the grant, is that part of the $1 million?
Yes.
Okay, how much is the grant you're looking at?
I believe it's 650,000. We had estimated 600 as part of the plan.
Okay. And then there
So
might be
there'd
additional...
125 from town sources.
Okay.
And then the balance would be both in-kind as well as private financing.
All right.
Bronson Road Arch to Box Culvert. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, we talked about that one already. That's the same one that
Yep.
you mentioned
Yep.
before.
Same one, that next
Sturgis
one?
Bridge Design, Mr.
We did that one.
Bateson asked about that. Senior Center renovation. Anything news on this one?
No, so that's the reduced figure from the previous one.
Kings Highway Phase 3 construction. So this is listed a couple different times here. You're taking it out at the top and putting it back in at the bottom?
Yeah, one, I think we just broke it up per year because one will involve design and then the one would involve construction. And
Okay,
again,
this
that would
is
only
again
be
the
on
grant.
if we got a grant, correct.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Again, thank you, Mr. Barnhart, for coming up. So we've gone through all the removes, the reductions, the increases, the news that are accounted for in here. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns on any of these?
Just on that Kings Highway, will you have the reduction up top? Kings Highway Phase 2, Phase 3, is that for design, a reduction in the design costs?
I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I believe, because I don't see how it could have been 800,000 though for design, so I don't know.
Well, it says a reduction of 500,000.
Yeah, I think that was when it was before it was incorporated design and construction, so I think we just split it out and it's, I don't think anything's outright changed. I just think it's been split into two categories.
Okay.
Any other questions on these items that we've gone through?
The only question I have is oh, go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
Chris, go ahead.
Another process question for Mr. Mayor. Last year's exhibit, we also talked about the deltas and the reimbursements, which we didn't do this year. Am I to assume that there were no changes in reimbursements from last year?
I wouldn't be certain on that, no, but nothing significant. And it's,
What, nothing significant? Is that the
well, I mean,
answer
it's,
to-
I mean, we get the information, the bridges are all at, what, 80% more or less?
Well, they vary depending
They
on the
vary
grant.
on the grant, right, but I
But
mean,
what
it's
we
a-
can tell you is the two current projects, Valley Road Bridge, they said we were going to get 80% back, and we're getting 80% back. And the Kings Highway one is going according to
Yeah,
plan
according
as
to plan.
well.
Yeah,
So,
no-
and
that's why I
Duck
said
Farm,
nothing
that's in the
that-
design, we're getting 80% when we submit those invoices.
Maybe just for next year's, we add that back in for reimbursement to exhibit 3.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt.
The only question I have is, there's the two projects that we plan on getting pretty much 100% reimbursement on. That's the downtown Fairfield resiliency using green infrastructure, and then the Stratfield pedestrian streetscape improvement, which I was glad to hear we got getting $650,000 potentially this week as a grant. Doesn't that screw our numbers up if we're not going to do these projects, right, unless we get the money? So we're putting them in as though they're capital that we're going to spend. We're putting them against in our waterfalls where we're going to spend the money. It almost should be in a bonding category.
They have the reimbursement, though.
But
they-
the
oh, it's
reimbursement
part of
takes
the
us-
reimbursement. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's, Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate to go to Exhibit 2 quickly and take a look at that?
Exhibit 2, what is Exhibit 2? Desk comparison. Yes, sir.
All right, so this is what our debt service looks like. And remember, the out years are probably less than they're going to be because we have less visibility, correct?
Correct.
So here we're up by about $3 million. Now, some of this has to do with the, I hate to keep bringing it up, but the golf course, right? And the clubhouse.
Which number are you referencing? I'm sorry.
So if you look at it, you have, if we go all the way out to 2049, you have us, last year you have us at 426 million. And then this year, same figure, you have us at 429,812, which the differential is 3.7 million, which we know we increased.
Which is a combination of the $12 million increase down at the bottom.
Yep.
Offset by the reduction in years 2027 to 2037 of 1.5 million on the non-recurring capital.
Yep. Anybody having questions, comments, concerns right now, anything specific? We do have the Board of Education projects to go through next, so I don't want to...
The only question I have is with the money spent down on the berm, is that spent with cash or are we bonding for that money? The $800,000 that I was just reading about in the paper?
That's all been spent out of operations.
Operations? Okay, so there's no bonding for any of that?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
We'll discuss that at our quarterly meeting. We also, some of that 800, and would be interesting to know, Mr. Michelangelo, are you still here? I'd really like to know, and I think the board would like to know, what projects did not get done because people were spending time working on that as opposed to doing what they were planned to do around town? Because there's the opportunity cost of the staff that's been deferred, and I think we really want to know that. Mr. Mayor, I think we really want to capture and make sure it's captured all of our costs, so whatever happens with the lawsuit, we can go after everything that it's cost the town.
We're attempting to track everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for your effort. Anything else on the town side? Mrs. Iacono, please.
Can I ask a question about Exhibit 4?
Absolutely.
The Borough Mansion kitchen update, is that project completed? Did that happen? Because I remember something, and I could be, my recollection could be wrong, but I thought somehow that got held up. So is this number right?
The number that was approved was 228,000.
Okay.
When we went out to bid, originally it came in higher than that. We had the architect carve out the bid for the HVAC part and the construction part, and it came in favorable doing it as two separate bids under the 228. So both of those bids have been awarded, and the work just started a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So by Christmas time, hopefully it'll be complete and it'll be able to be used.
So it is happening at the 228.
Correct. Yeah.
When was that supposed to originally be done? Was that 2 years ago?
And just I think the approval was in February of 2017. So we had hoped to do it on
The
schedule.
summer of this
Correct.
Well, I guess it really doesn't matter there.
Yeah, but
on a cycle of
correct.
2017.
Yeah. Actually, we did it in 3 phases. To skin the cat, we bought the appliances under one bid, the HVAC type work under another bid, and the construction bid under a third bid. So we had to do that to skin the cat to get our prices down where we needed to be.
So you anticipate for the holiday season that would be
Correct.
completed project?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that, Joe. So the project that we approved several years ago, the total renovation of that building, everything's getting done. It just took 3 phases to get it done. We're not leaving any work undone, such as the renovation of the kitchen or
well,
I remember that was a big issue with the caterers or something, right? Didn't it bring down the value or something, rentals?
well, the kitchen's gonna be done over there as part of this project. So the demolition of the existing kitchen, so to speak, is something that we'll probably do in-house. There was also a future handicap ramp between levels that's still outstanding. But once again, that may be incorporated in
I don't like that word outstanding.
well, yeah, it's,
What we approve, is it gonna get done?
correct.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on these items? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you, everyone who came up to present. And we're going to go to the Board of Education and step through your facility plan. And let me be clear, I always ask this question. Mr. Mayor, your summary documents, everything we just looked at, includes the latest and greatest from the Board of Education. So we are in sync here.
That's a correct statement.
Okay, welcome. Thanks for your patience this evening. You guys usually get to go first. Tonight you drew the short end of the stick here. So how would you like to proceed? What's the best way to do this?
Well, you should have gotten an email with the attachments, and then I brought hard copies for you because they're hard to print out and small and hard to see. But of the 4 documents you received, probably the summary sheet is the best one to look at. It looks like this.
So this one.
Correct.
Okay.
So what we did per your recommendation a few years ago was outline the changes that we made through the facility plan and the waterfall.
Okay.
So you'll see the very good news right at the top is the waterfall, we were able to remove 4 past years because so much work has gotten completed. If you remember things like Ward High School's roof was in 4 phases, 4 years. That now is complete, so there's no funding asked for that's spread out. We were able to knock 4 years right off from the waterfall.
Great.
So that's at the top. Then if you look down the left-hand side, it tells you if the project has been removed, there's been a cost increase, if it's new or a cost decrease. And as you roll across, you see that the fiscal years are identified, and if there's an increase in cost, it's in red, meaning we need more money. If it's a decrease or a savings, it's in green.
And so which ones of these have we already approved, if you don't mind me asking? Because they're not noted here, so I'm trying to figure out which ones are in play and which ones...
Well, certainly 17, 18 is all approved.
Yep.
18, 19 is approved, and there's some changes there that's really good news that I'd like to take a minute to talk about, and that's the 2 roofs.
Yeah, please.
The roof warranty extensions on the McKinley and Rogersville Middle School schools expire this year, 2018. Firestone is the manufacturer of those roofs. Firestone doesn't historically do a roof extension program. They just started one last year. Our preventive maintenance contractor was able to work with them, got them to come out and walk the 2 roofs, and found that the roofs were in such good shape, the PM program was working so well, that if we put 0.03 cents per square foot into each roof, which equates to just under $10,000 for both roofs, they will extend them up to 10 years. So we took these 2 out of the waterfall. I'm going to put it in the Board of Ed operating budget under roof preventive maintenance and get those 2 done this year, have the manufacturer come back out and give us an extended warranty.
Hey, well done.
Yeah, it was really good news.
Yeah, congratulations. Nicely done. Okay, go ahead with...
So if you go down to Sherman,
yeah,
Sherman
I saw the
shows a
increase
cost
there.
increase. So Sherman's always been in the waterfall for its phase 3 at $3 million. Due to some site work that we want to increase a parent drop-off into the Fern Street side of the building, we added the $200,000 to cover those changes, traffic signs and all of that work, and an added island extended to the bus loop out front.
How's that being paid for then?
That's going to be a building committees involved.
But do they have to come back to us for more funding on this?
No, that was originally entered in as 3.2 million.
That, it was entered in as 3.2.
Correct.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Okay.
But since you've seen this since last year, September
I got it. So
2017,
this is
there's
a change from
of
last year,
200,000.
yep.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for the clarification.
So that takes into account 1819.
Yep.
You go to 1920, and you see a moved Tomlinson acoustical ceiling lights. We have been watching this project and feel we can move that out a few years. Cost decrease is the switch project. This was also good news. Nancy couldn't be here tonight, Nancy Burns, but she was able to, during the Phase 1 project, lock in the federal E-rate grant for a very large savings to the project.
Nice.
That was good work on her part. And then you see some new projects. So Fairfield Ward High School, item number 27, line 27, the Fitz House unit is from 1991. There's 4 HVAC units on the top of that roof. 2 are 50-ton, 2 are 30-ton. They're starting to fail, so you're going to see those incorporated into the waterfall over a series of years to get those replaced.
Okay.
The second new item is something we've been working with the town on. The district-wide IT server system is the HVAC system. There are 9 computers on the Board of Ed Fairfield Public Schools side that can essentially dial into any school building HVAC system from a notebook computer.
We talked about this.
Correct.
I thought, yeah.
When they do that, it opens up, it goes across the server, the mainframe, to the whole district. It opens it up for security risk for somebody to enter in and damage the systems for the whole district. So this is the project to remove that and isolate the software away from our server for the whole district.
Was there funds that we gave you in the last budget to deal with this as well?
Not on the school side we haven't. I think the town...
Maybe it was on the town side.
The town is...
It was on the town side.
...working on it, but we have not yet.
Okay.
The next item is a new item. We're starting to enter in the building management system upgrades for every school. This is the stuff that Johnson Control did in 1999. So those systems now are very old, antiquated, trouble finding parts. The last circuit board we had to order came out of Texas and took 4 weeks before we could get it to replace something on a unit. So we're working with an engineer, professional engineer, to work with us and design and develop a new BMS system for each school, and you'll see them across the waterfall. We're taking the worst schools to the best. We're incorporating what building committees have already done and going to get completed systems moving forward. The next item is a district-wide security safety infrastructure. This is a Phase 5. This is a program and a project that you'll see when we come before you with our capital non-recurring booklet. Working with the police, we're looking at some interior work now to do at the schools.
So when is this over, Tom? I mean, we've been doing this now for many years, and I remember when we first started, it was kind of like, we're going to chunk this out, and we're going to be done with it in a few years. But this thing seems to have a life of its own and just keeps on going.
Well, the police did a lot of work to do a report, a school report on every building. We addressed the major ones up front. We just met with them to see what their next priorities are and what the next threat assessment would be inside the schools if a perpetrator got in the school. And we've identified some things that we could be doing moving forward. And we'll give you a lot of details on those as we get there. The bulk of the rest of the reports, just to answer your question as to is there ever going to be an end to this, the bulk of the rest of them is a lot of site work, foliage around the schools, trees and bushes and things that we've talked with them about, and they know that that's a...
What does that mean, getting rid of them or cleaning
cutting them way back, cleaning them out, and it's something that we can't really do without it growing back. So if the removal part, they understand, is a more bigger issue.
It might be
at the
good,
schools
and
for
I don't
site
know.
view.
I understand that you guys need to play this stuff close to the vest for obvious reasons, so I don't want to open this up broadly. But it might be good at some point to have kind of an executive session and kind of get a view of what have we actually funded and done. And what does that mean? Because,
We have those ready. We have
Okay.
spreadsheets ready to show you every phase, what we asked for, what got completed, how much did we spend, and how much did we save.
yeah, that might be good to do sooner rather than later at some point.
Okay.
I don't know,
Well
does anybody
noted.
disagree with that?
No. Are there more phases than phase 5?
Not at this time. When I met with the chief of police and the Lieutenant Waya, we had a list of 10 things, and we said we really should keep it around a certain number for the waterfall. What were your top priorities? And they picked 2. We're going to be able to do those, and they're pretty happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, to your point, if this number is dwindling from previous year's expenditures and it's becoming routine, wouldn't we just consider moving it into operational?
Well, that's what I want to see, the whole, yes.
That's what
I mean,
it
it's-
seemed to be, that's what you're
Yeah.
getting at.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's dwindling as quickly as I thought it was going to dwindle as well. And that's not a complaint, it's just
Understood.
we've kept on doing it, right? And just,
Keep in mind, in the operating budget, we are handling all of the
Some of
preventive
it.
maintenance,
yeah,
the repairs, replacement of pieces of equipment that go. We are capturing all of that under a security account. So you're not seeing those.
okay.
I could see facility hardening or something like that being in this category, but if it's going to be routine,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Next item in that fiscal year, 1920, is the Walter Fitzgerald campus relocation. So this is something that the Board of Ed is working on now, in a project with the superintendent and that department. That St. Emery School is in extremely poor condition. The rent and lease goes up each year. We're at a point where we need to negotiate a new contract, and we don't want to give them another 3 to 5 year extension. The money we're giving them, they're putting less than 2% into the back into the building, not meeting a lot of our needs. Roof's in extremely bad shape. The windows are in extremely bad shape. We couldn't put in 2 new air conditioners this past summer because the electrical system's maxed out on the whole building. And when I called to talk to the Archdiocese about it, they said, well, are you considering another 5-year extension? Maybe we can work with you on that. It wasn't the answer I wanted to hear.
Have you looked at other buildings?
So we have in the past, but I haven't started.
You looked at Holy Family,
That's
they've got an empty.
the one we're going to call. They originally asked us if we would move in there. They were willing to give us the first floor, not the bottom floor, but it was a very long time ago. It was about 8 years ago.
All right. Ms. Iacono.
How did you come up with the $200,000 just to relocate? Look, I pulled the lease, you're paying $100,000 in rent right now. Where can you move for $200,000?
Yeah, maybe the superintendent wants to talk about that.
So as the board is working through this project, one of the things that we've tried to look at is, first of all, we don't know where we're going to be able to move, and we're just starting to do that. What we were doing is looking at if we were moving into a space where you knew it didn't have leaks, you have decent flooring, you have the basics of the building. If you had to go in and renovate I think we built it off of 6 classrooms. If you had to do things like plumbing and some things like that, what would that basic cost be? But this is very much a placeholder until we really get through the next couple of months of looking at that. And one of the things that is on our list is to invite you, if you want to be able to tour the building. The board just finished those tours over the last couple of weeks, and I think it would be good for you to be able to understand what our challenges are with Walter Fitzgerald. So you will get an invitation to be able to go and have a look inside.
Okay.
I have a follow-up on that.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, what's the status of the Nichols Street building with Operation Hope? They're vacating. I know that needs massive renovation, but what's the plan? Do you know? The first selectman's not here. Are you going to mothball it?
I've not been involved in
Send it
that.
for school? So we don't know.
I've not been involved in
Is that on the list to look at?
That is a suggestion that actually came from the community when they heard that we were talking about this, both of those properties. But it's literally at the very beginning.
Yeah, what's the, whatever happened with the old reserve building? Yeah, the Armory place. Whatever.
20 years ago.
Yeah, we were gonna get that like 12 years ago, right?
where's
That
the,
was discussed when I was on the Board of Finance.
Right, which was ages ago.
Ages ago.
We were young, but.
I was on the Board of Ed, and we were trying, as a Board of Ed, to grab hold
So, I
of
mean,
that.
those
We were
are
actually
three-
asked to provide some ideas for that building way back then.
Right,
to
we
the
were gonna move
selectmen
you
at the
guys
time.
in there.
Yeah, we looked at the
Get
bus
you out of the
depot.
Taj Mahal.
The
Right, we were
bus
gonna put you in
depot, we looked at the Pale and Co-op program. Yes.
right, I just have concerns that that number's gonna be so far off that it turns out to
You're
be
probably
a
right.
I
Yeah, this-
understand that it's a placeholder, but it just feels like a phantom number to me.
Yeah, this
So I'm
didn't
just putting
include
that
a
out.
lot of new walls and all that kind of
And
work.
I think
This
that's where
was
we get into trouble, where we're
finding-
not taking into account any of that stuff, and then you
Yeah.
come back with, I don't think this is a real number at all. I mean, I don't think
It's
you're gonna
really
be able
just
to
a
do anything with
placeholder.
that. The other thing is, can you just let us know what you're looking for square footage wise? I have a sheet from 2013 that says the square footage, but I can't find anything. Can you
For
remember that?
Walter Fitzgerald campus?
Well, I mean, this wouldn't have changed, but for the whole district, it would be good to get an update on this.
Sure.
And then, does anybody know where we can find out stats on the Operation Hope building, like how big it is, what the square footage is? Mr. Mayor, do you have any idea?
Sorry?
The town asset on Nichols Street, where Operation Hope is, where do we find the stats on how?
I can get that for you.
Thank you.
Can I just add, while you brought that up, that the square footage fact sheet is in our budget book?
It's in the
So
budget
if you have a
book?
copy of the
Okay,
budget book,
thank
it's
you.
updated and in there, it's in the back
Thanks, Tom.
every year.
Keep going, Tom. There. Yeah, please.
There's two.
Go ahead. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Well, a comment and then a question on the Walter Fitzgerald, just a placeholder. It does seem though that it's kind of this pattern where every one of our placeholders always seems to be kind of on the low side. So even this one, it might not be drastically more. It's almost, I mean, I can't imagine you're gonna hit $200,000 on it. in the
Actually
end.
not. When we moved into St. Emery's, we spent $157,000 on a construction project to set it up.
I mean,
So,
and then scaled up to
It really
this, but
depends on the building,
just,
but
just where it's at.
Understood.
I hope you're right and hope for less, right? Obviously. The other one, and I'm not seeing it anywhere here, but I would think it would be near term, is don't you have space in one of the Julian buildings still?
I didn't hear you. What was the
Don't you
building?
have space in a Julian building? still?
Meadow
So-
Street. Yeah, our maintenance shop.
Is that
in
this
the-
year or not? But it's got to be coming up soon for where it's done, and
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know if it's been flat out, decided what to do with that, but I think a lot of the boards have made a pretty hard line about not wanting to be in business with a particular company. So,
That space is well used by the Board of Ed. It suits the purpose quite well. And I know that there's issues with Julian on other areas, but there have been excellent tenants there. And we're in negotiations right now to, excuse me, renewing the lease.
Renewing the lease.
Lease expires at the end of this year.
okay, so it is soon. Yeah, because I didn't see anything for a build out somewhere else. So the goal is
Right, no, it's,
stay there.
they've been, quite professional and, in the process. It's, they and I both know there's other issues going on, but those are separate.
So moving forward, as I just cutting to the chase, I'm sorry, Dave, did you?
No, you answered the question. I didn't see
Okay.
it somewhere, and I was surprised.
This looks like a lot of roof replacement, a lot of boiler replacement, some window replacement, and then bathroom replacements, air conditioner replacements, and then I'm seeing things like a Jennings renovation, small, a Dwight renovation, smaller than I would have thought, actually, and then what's interesting is I see a Mill Hill roof project for $1 million in like 6 years, which would be kind of silly if we're redoing the school.
The warranty has to expire, we don't get reimbursement. So,
Okay. So I mean, am I reading this right? That's about what we're looking at here? There's nothing, talk to us about anything major. Is there anything, you got Jennings, Dwight,
Tom, I don't mean to interrupt,
Yeah.
but to your point, when you say the Jennings and Dwight number are small, is that a good thing, or are we just
Well,
not
that's what I was gonna
recognizing
ask, right.
the liability?
Right. Are
Or
we
the obligation to
Well,
renovate?
It goes to Ms. Iacono's point about these placeholders, are they small? And the other thing I was gonna ask about, you're absolutely right, Ed, is have you put escalators on for
Yes.
these costs in out years? So
yes,
can you-
4 to 5% escalation is on year to year. The Dwight and Jennings are smaller because they don't have a lot of portable classrooms. They don't have the need of expanding to put classrooms on as additions. So it's mainly the upgrading of the mechanical means of fresh air and air conditioning, bathrooms, ceiling and lights, and things that are generally for an old building brought up to date. Some things that'll be ADA compliant for Dwight. It doesn't have to be 100% compliant, but we'd like to do some things there, maybe put a small elevator up into
It seems
the
like
2
Dwight's
floors.
been waiting for a long, long time too, hasn't it?
So, I mean, Dwight, when I first came here in 2002, had 7 portable classrooms.
Right.
It was a problem, but
Okay. Ms. Iacono.
So on that point, if I go all the way out to 2022, 2023, and you have the Ward new windows, how much were the Ludlow windows? You
Lud-
3.1, but didn't the Ludlow windows cost more?
with the hazardous material cleanup, yes.
Well, aren't we gonna have hazardous material cleanup on?
We don't know to what extent. We only have the chlorine testing we did, and we have a note in the facility plan that the hazardous materials aren't included yet in those numbers.
Yeah,
So-
again, I think this is where we start to look at why,
So-
I don't know, this is your purview, but why is that not incorporated in there?
Well, I guess the question is, you don't have much give in these numbers. These numbers are, everything's gotta go right on a bunch of these projects in order for these numbers to be accurate.
Correct, and I also can't do hazardous material testing and then not react to it if it comes back positive.
No, but I guess what, for planning purposes, particularly when we're looking so many years out, I'm wondering if we shouldn't be more conservative by putting more realistic or bigger numbers out there. Yeah, I'm not, God forbid we spend more money, that's not what we're saying, but we sit here and we're constantly surprised, and it's like, well, we really shouldn't be, right? We should know, and maybe our decision-making would be different if it was, instead of, 1.8, it was 2.3. Yeah, I make that up. But should we look at doing this in a more conservative manner so we have more realistic numbers? Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom, and what I was thinking, I mean, just looking at the document, the facilities plan, I mean, I know that the last time the board approved it was 2015, even though we've had updates, maybe it's time for them to revisit the document in total. You know, I mean, I'm also too seeing, ECC, Walter Fitzgerald, we've got, some other space needs that might be popping up, maybe it's time for them to revisit this.
Yeah. And the only other thing I would say is, when you look at the out years, this is me being an accountant, right? So just take this for what it's worth. When I look at a number that's like 3 or 4 years out, that comes to like 1,381,242. That's a very specific number. Versus if I know it's, 1,400,000, I kind of know that there's a bit of swag in that. But this makes it seem so darn specific.
It's based on square footage, it's based on some projects we recently did.
Yeah,
If
I
you look
just
at
round
the-
it.
I
guess that's-
understand.
Just so that we know that
If
that level
you-
of specificity of that specific project isn't available for next year. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It just.
And
that's
when you
something
add
I've
the
always done.
escalator on,
Yeah.
I just rather an upside surprise that this came in better, especially on something that you just did at a school. You just did the windows at Ludlow.
Mhm.
At a minimum, it should be that number because you're gonna have some kind of hazardous material, and if the upside surprise is that it's not there, guess what? I get to reduce. Look how happy it is when people are seeing green on your sheet.
we could do that.
I just think it makes more sense, and you're gonna have a more positive reception. some of these numbers, and those are the ones that just stand out to me because I'm familiar with them. I don't know if any of the other ones are set up that way as well.
Or ask for two and you can send one.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
and we can get into the ECC, and I also want to touch on air conditioning too when we have an opportunity.
Sure, let's go to Mr. Mattola and then we'll come back to you.
I don't necessarily disagree with the conversation here, but I don't want members of this board coming back in a few years saying, well, you're inflating the numbers, that's all. Because we've said that before in the past. So, yeah, we have. Come on. So
Well,
that's
there's
my
actually
point.
a disincentive to inflate the numbers. If they inflate the numbers, it's less stuff that they can do.
Yeah.
It's actually works the other way around. It's why
Right.
it's easier to put a smaller number in.
It's, I guess, we're not looking for inflate, deflate, we're looking for realistic, right? And it's like, to say, hey, if we don't... Right, and it assumes that you found nothing, like... Right, go ahead. Let her go, because I did, and then we'll come back to you. Go right ahead.
So in other words, we don't really have a universal rule that says, look, we just had an experience. We have all this legacy infrastructure. So you can be pretty sure what happens at one school may happen at another. So we don't really have a rule that says we need to apply that experience as, you know, Ms. Iacono just said, to the next building that is similar enough that you can expect that.
I mean, you're right, I don't know that we need a rule, it's just...
Well,
kind
yeah,
of-
that's a strong word,
it's
just to
kind
sort
of
of
when you're
intuit
estimating,
that. Yeah.
right? Unless you know Burr. You're probably not going to have the problem at Burr that you had at the schools that were built in the 50s. So ergo, your guesstimate probably doesn't take into account that you're going to have remediation efforts there.
Mhm.
But if you're opening up one school that was last opened in the 1950s and replacing, it's
That's it.
reasonable to assume you're going to have some type of issue in Europe. That's the way I would say it. It's
Right.
an educated guess. Is that a fair point, Tom?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Mr. DeWitt, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, no, I just want to be clear. We have not come down on inflating numbers. I personally have come down, and I said it at our very last meeting. There's no process, right? There should be just a simple list. When I look at any project at any school that is built in the 1970s or before, and it says, doesn't say hazardous waste removal, I go, what? Why not, right? It's a very simple thing. I'd like one project before I get off this board that comes in lower than the number that started with. And Ms. Iacono is absolutely right. We just did this. If it's not at least that number, there's some issue there. What building was that? You must have overinflated
Yeah,
the
but they...
number.
You want to go on Mill Hill?
Yeah. What else? Anybody else?
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The stuff with Stratfield, is that all the old stuff? I know you're moving it out, but since that building was just kind of had a major rehab, is that the front stuff that was always existing, the front facade?
Yes, and they did a rehab of that, but they told us it would only last about 5 years.
Oh.
So we're watching that woodwork, make sure it's not rotting. We may have to do a facelift.
Okay.
And I've been watching the retaining walls out front. They've been there quite a while.
Okay, and, you know, I've been reading the articles about the ECC. There's no ECC money here, I've noticed. Correct?
Right, there is.
Yeah, I can address that and also the air conditioning question. So we are just now starting to look at what we're going to do with ECC. It's not reflected in here because we literally have just had our very first meeting. We're starting input from our teachers, input from our parents, our community, because our numbers, we have outgrown that building. And a lot of the community didn't realize that last year we had already moved our first classroom off-site. So we have a split program right now, and we're looking obviously across the district, and we'll be working a lot with the staff on this. What is the solution going forward? And hope this time next year you may see something in here, but it's going to take us, you know, definitely the fall semester, maybe into early spring, before we can start to have a solution.
What's the reasoning for the expansion?
what are the reasons for it?
You know, nobody really knows why we have more children than we used to have. I think everybody's seeing it nationally, but I would say that if you, and Mr. Mancusi addressed this, the special education director, we are responsible by law for child find. Our assessments are better, our connection with preschools and local, birth to 3 program, it's much stronger than it was a decade or 2 decades ago, but there isn't anybody who has kind of that magic answer for why the numbers are increasing in the way that they are, but they must qualify for services. And right now, when we ended last year, we were about 161 students, up significantly from where we were just 4 years ago.
So does that mean that at each of those locations, you're going to have to build a special playground with rubberized mats, kind of like the ones you just replaced at the current ECC, brand new, right?
Right, we're looking right now at what that would mean going forward. We have actually early childhood playgrounds at Dwight, we have one at McKinley, we have one just one in at Stratfield, where we have had pre-K. So there are some flexibility around the district, but again, we're going to have to work with our staff on that going forward this year.
Okay. So we'll have a better idea where this is going by November?
I don't know if it will be November. It's a big decision. We definitely, by the spring, we will. It depends on how quickly the conversations are working with the community. This is a big community issue because people who have had their children at ECC absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really difficult for those families to think that we may have to have either a blended model or the model's going to look a little bit different, or are they going to be asking us to expand the ECC? But we actually don't believe we even have the land to do that there. So we have a lot to answer over the next couple of months in working with the community.
Can I ask a question on that? So this isn't, based on that timing, this isn't something that would go in place for next school year, right? It would be, you'd be looking at the...
Well, it all depends. If the solution is that we're going to basically have two centralized programs instead of which, you'll hear people say centralized, decentralized. We've already had to decentralize the first time you move a class out. But if you take another school site, another one of our elementary schools, and you say, let's put 3 or 4 classrooms clustered together, we may already have the facility to accommodate that because we have a certain amount of classrooms that have restrooms, but we also may be short a classroom that needs a restroom put in. So those are the things we will have to look at. And the playground really is the easiest for pre-K in that they're not exorbitant compared to like a K-5 playground. They're much smaller area, the equipment is smaller, but we've got to look at all of that this school year.
Mr. Bates?
I hear what Dr. Jones is saying, but in this discussion, I don't want to mix up curriculum and space. I think we really need to determine what the BOE wants it to do for curriculum first. I happen to have strong feelings about the ECC program and keeping it centralized. So if you need to make up your mind first as to what you're going to do, then you can come to us and we can help you solve your space problem. But I think we need you to make that decision first, because I'm hearing now ECC, Walter Fitzgerald, I've got an expiring lease. It sounds like you guys are in the space business right now, and we're more than willing to help. But we need to know where you want to go.
Well, and that's that. We've had one board meeting where we've discussed it, and the room was packed. And so I would say the board is certainly not averse to having those discussions, even though they're very challenging discussions. So we're working on that.
I know you guys got a lot on your plate, but I didn't think time was of the essence. But I'm looking at a lease that's expiring, and I didn't even know I had a decentralized ECC program until I watched the meeting. So, shame on me, but if we've got an issue, you guys need to tell us where you want to go. We'll get you there.
Well, and that's why it's not in the waterfall tonight, but we're talking about it early.
What else?
The earlier, the better.
What else isn't in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me talk to that. So I did broach the subject at our last board meeting about air conditioning. It has become a health and a safety issue in our schools. And if any of you that have students who are at Ludlow, well, this is a prime example. We put in beautiful new windows, but you have 21st century windows in a 1950s, 60s building. And those classrooms literally can be over 100 degrees. And we have cool zones. We try to use all of our buildings, the media centers, auditoriums, some of the classrooms that have air conditioning, but it's reached a point where it's become very, very challenging. And the other thing that's really impacted us is the safety aspect, because if you take an older building, and I'm just going to say Holland Hill before the renovation, you know, those buildings, you used to be able to open your classroom doors during the day. You got cross breeze and down the hall. We can't even open our doors anymore. And it has become a health and safety issue. So we would like to look at some sort of 10-year plan, very similar to what we did to get rid of trailers, to start addressing the issue. The great thing is most of our elementaries you do see on the waterfall. When you actually start thinking about McKinley's done, Burr's done, Stratfield's done, you see Dwight, you know, on here, you see Jennings, we're doing Holland Hill. Where it's going to be more of a challenge is our 2 middle schools that are partial and our high schools. And they're going to be pretty big projects.
Are you talking full air conditioning for the buildings? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
don't forget North Stratfield.
Right, yeah. So we're looking at that right now. That'll be a discussion this year, and I would expect that you would see that come before you this time next year.
So just so we're all planning for the future and our expectations, your chart could dramatically change in terms of what you're going to have to push off and prioritize. And somebody mentioned, I think it was Selectman Bateson, this has not been voted on by the Board of Education since 2015. So when is this going to be on an agenda for discussion and possible changes to their plan, so we can, as a town, start to plan for what you guys need from a program standpoint? Because the updates, they're not cutting it. The board's going to, based on what you're telling us, has to make some hard decisions very soon. When is this going to be on an agenda to vote on?
Well, the update was on there August 21st of 2018.
I know, but
the issues,
I'm talking about like
right.
a vote to add air conditioning, a vote to move Jennings School out 3 years, a vote to whatever you're going to do with the ECC, that stuff, so that we have the appropriate planning documents here.
Well, I think that's a lot of the work that we're starting now, and I don't know, Mr. Peterson, if you want to weigh in from the board's perspective on that.
I mean, I would just say that, you know, I would just say that we're sympathetic to that view, especially with issues like, you know, the air conditioning, which, you know, we discussed a little bit at our last meeting. It is a very busy agenda calendar that we have coming up, but I think we'd be open to the idea of reviewing the document.
Okay. What else? Is there other things, other initiatives that aren't included in this right now? We've got ECC and we've got air conditioning. The air conditioning is major. I want to follow up on something you said on the air conditioning. You're talking about a 10-year project or whatever. I don't know about that. I don't know how that works because I don't know how you say you're getting it, you're not getting it. I don't know how that solves your issue of if you have to close down what part of the district for a day because of the, you know, or you're going to have to close down the whole district because 2 schools don't have air conditioning and the rest do. I just wouldn't go right to it's got to be a 10-year. Yeah, I'm going to adopt a little bit of what Mr. Bateson said. Tell us what you need and we'll try to get you there, right? Right? And I don't know whether air conditioning is the right. I don't live in the school, so I don't know. But I would hate to be the person that said, Jennings, wait 10 years.
I can tell you, I was in Ward last week, oh my God, it was terrible. And
Open house.
you know what, my 2 points on this is that we're all professionals and we all work in an air-conditioned environment, but our students and many of our teachers at the beginning of the year and the end of the year are in buildings that are 90 degrees. It's just, things have changed over the last 30 years when it's come to, I don't remember it being this hot in September. Climate change, right. So I agree with you. I think it should be a priority.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't let you respond to my comment.
I'm sorry. Say that.
I didn't let you respond to my comments, and I didn't know what, it looked like you wanted to say something. And I kept on talking. Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Mr. Brown.
Just a question or request on this sheet, Tom. What we have here, like for 17-18, we have projected costs basically, right? Wonder if next year we could have 17-18 stay on here, but get actual costs next to these projected costs.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and then we just keep that going.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anybody else?
On the Walter Fitzgerald campus, have you tried to see if they would sell you the property? At least where the school is?
Yeah, about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, when we negotiated a new contract, we had language, the town helped us put language in there that we may want to purchase the building. The next update, the Archdiocese took it out, they're not selling the building.
Well, so I've been
So-
told, though, that the diocese, just like, the Diocese of Hartford just finished a complete review of all their properties in their parishes and closed a bunch of them and consolidated. Bridgeport is doing a very similar review, my understanding, so their
Maybe
official
things have
position
changed.
may be that right now,
Yeah.
but that could be a dramatically different position in 12 months, if
Just so
what I'm
everyone
hearing
knows,
is
the
correct.
current contract ends June 30th, 2019. We're working with Bob Mayer to try and negotiate a 1-year contract.
Yeah, that's, to Mr. Walsh's point, that'd probably be very bright, because that's my understanding. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the lease expires this June?
June, the current
The end of the
current
school
lease
year.
contract expires June
Oh,
30th.
Okay, you guys better get cooking.
Bob's good at this.
Anybody else? Ms. Esma?
So just to clarify, we talked about this a little while ago, the idea of adding inflation to these numbers. So next year, this chart should, just pick any one of these fixed numbers and
Go up 4 to 5%.
18, 19, right. So we don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting we add another column, but we don't necessarily, I mean, we know what that rate is that we're using, correct?
Correct.
A little bit like the bonding, where you see 4% for years when you know that it's probably
It's already-
dynamic and not
yeah.
static, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank you guys for all the hard effort, Mr. Mayor, you and your team, you guys, all the department heads, for putting this together. This is a useful discussion as we go forward planning, so I'd like to thank you. And I will take a motion. Take it from Mr. Mottola, we'll second from Ms. Esma. All in favor of adjournment? Those opposed? Good night, everybody.